Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was born during the clan wars. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Morpheus the Dream Lord, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Whenever someone of their profession thought of the Uzumaki clan, they always envisioned a clan filled to the brim with redheads that had impeccable writing and a knack for outliving everyone that didn't share their bloodline. Well, most of that was true, but as the old age adage goes, there's an exception to every rule. Uzumaki Naruto was the exception to the rule this time around. Born prematurely with blonde hair instead of the famous Uzumaki red, and with a quieter outlook on life than most of them, he was the quintessential black sheep of the clan. Just because he looked and acted differently from most of the Uzumaki did not mean that they treated him differently. There was an ongoing joke among most of the clans in the Shinobi world that the Uzumaki were a bunch of hippies. One would think that they would abhor such a title, given how the world they lived in valued strength and power which were achieved through violence, terrible violence, over love, but the Uzumaki did not care. They didn't abhor their nickname, but rather adored it. Embraced it. Strove to prove that they could live up to it despite being a clan of killers by profession. Uzumaki Naruto, despite being different to them in appearance and attitude, was treated like any other Uzumaki. His different appearance may have been instantaneous, visible from birth, but his attitude was something that expressed itself over time. His parents started noticing it when he was just at the tender age of 4. It was during a simple trip to buy groceries at a nearby marketplace, where Naruto's mother, Kushina, a red-haired woman that exuded beauty similar to that of goddess, had taken Naruto to get acquainted with the world. They had just passed a small stand that sold toys, and she had the bright idea of getting Naruto a toy. When she had asked him which one he wanted from the plethora of toys that were on display, he replied with a simple, "that one." Pointing at a blue yo-yo that was next to a blunt plastic kunai and a wood figurine. Them picking a yo-yo was normal, after all it was a childish toy, but it was what he did with it that completely caught his mother off guard. Well, most children would immediately try to play with a yo-yo by doing different things with it, like biting it, throwing it into the air or even twisting it to see if there was something hidden within it. Naruto did not. He, instead, looked at it while his mother paid the vendor the amount necessary to purchase the yo-yo, noticed that it had a string that had a loop at the end of it, and quickly stuck his finger in said loop. After that, he took the yo-yo and dropped it, watching in all the avid curiosity that a 4-year-old had, as the yo-yo stopped short of hitting the ground before it jumped back into the air, almost as if it was begging to return to his hand. He complied with the inanimate object's silent request and caught it. It was at this time that Kushina turned around, expecting her son to have thrown the yo-yo onto the ground in an attempt to see how it worked. She was instead greeted by a sight she had not expected. Her little boy was calmly playing with the yo-yo as it should be played with, launching it at the ground before pulling it back into his hand. She watched him do this for about a minute, unsure of how she should process what she was seeing. She was by no means an expert at parenting, Naruto's first 12 months could attest to that, but even she knew that no 4-year-old could play with a yo-yo properly. She quickly came out of her stupor and deciding to talk to Naruto's father about it. She quickly left the market, her son in tow, along with the yo-yo that had his undivided attention. That night, Naruto's parents discussed the possibilities of what this meant for Naruto. His father, Minato, being a civilian, did not see things the way that Kushina did. To him, this was nothing special. His son was just gifted with the yo-yo. There were plenty of children, the world over, that were gifted at something from a young age, even murder. Kushina, who was a shinobi by profession, had been trained to see past what normal people could, and to her this was a sign that her child was special. The next case of Naruto's speciality making itself known was the very next day. His mother had come to his room to wake him up, but as soon as she entered his room, she witnessed something that shocked her more than what she had seen the previous day. Her son was sitting on his bed, cross-legged, and he was performing tricks she had never seen before with a yo-yo she had bought him. He would throw it at the ceiling before sticking out a finger from his left hand, using that finger to poke the string that held the yo-yo, which would result in the yo-yo's course being shifted to the left before he would start spinning it anti-clockwise in an almost hypnotizing manner. After that he stood up on his bed and started spinning it around his body, almost as if he were dancing with it. He treated it like it was his dance partner, performing tricky dance moves that no one with just a single day's experience with a yo-yo should be able to perform. Suffice to say that when his father found out about it, he reversed his previous statement. His wife had been right all along. His son was definitely special. While the discovery of Naruto's speciality had come at a relatively young age for his parents, it took those outside of his home a slightly longer period of time to discover it. A few years to be exact. While most clans sent their children out to war at just the tender age of 6 years, the Uzumaki did not. They instead chose to only start sending their children to school at that age. Their schooling program lasted a few years, during which a child is taught how to be literate, how to think properly, and of course, seeing as how this was a world embroiled in warfare, they taught their children how to kill. Because of this, Uzumaki children had the highest first mission survival rate out of all clans in the world. Their children entered war at the age of 12, which was an age where they could properly act as shinobi. However, this came with an adverse effect of making their 12-year-olds less experienced than those of the other clans. Children that were 12 in most clans were already considered veterans due to how they had already fought in a lot of battles and had lived to tell their tales. When Naruto entered the academy, as the Uzumaki liked to call their school, he was 6 years old. He only stayed in it for 2 years. During the first couple of weeks of his tenure in Yuzu no Kuni's academy, Naruto seemed like a completely normal child, one that they had already seen before 100 times over. He just happened to have the noticeable trait of blonde hair and a very quiet attitude, one he would discover he had garnered from his father. As the weeks turned to months, however, it became apparent that Naruto was anything but ordinary. At first, whenever he would finish a test ahead of all of his classmates or answer questions when asked, his instructors thought it was just pure coincidence. Maybe he studied beforehand. That was the general consensus. But, as time went by, it soon became apparent that it was far from being luck or coincidence that he knew what was being asked. What is the most surefire way to achieve victory in battle? That was a question that had been asked by one of his instructors. He had asked the entire class of 20, intending to see how these 6-year-old children would react. He had expected answers such as being the strongest or a good strategy. Children always gave those two answers. There is none. Naruto stated, while drawing something on a piece of paper, never really looking up at his teacher. If he had, he would have seen the shocked expression the man displayed. What Naruto said had been absolutely on the money. There was no surefire way to win a battle because every battle was different. Most kids knew this by the time they graduated, not immediately after entering the academy. The instructor walked up to Naruto to see what he was doing, and upon seeing what it was that the boy was doing, he was left in a state of great shock. The instructor saw Naruto's drawing, which was a design of a yo-yo that could protrude sharp spikes while spinning. This was to be the first weapon the boy designed. After that day, the instructor spread the word amongst his colleges about Naruto's genius, and they all took notice of it soon after. Tests were administered to the boy, and he passed them all without even trying. While most Uzumaki were considered to be smarter than the average person due to how they could master the most complex of the shinobi arts, kinjutsu, they were still considered to be the intellectual inferior of the Nara clan that resided within Hai no Kuni. Naruto was in Uzumaki with a Nara's brain. What do you do for fun? That was a question that had been asked by one of the children he went to school with. I study and practice, had been Naruto's answer. Naturally, word of his genius intellect spread across the entire island like wildfire, and pretty soon even kids his own age caught wind of it. They started hanging out with him more than they did before, in hopes of having his genius rub off on them. Unfortunately for them, that was not how things worked. You either have it or you don't. Also unfortunate for Naruto was that the other children only did this during school hours. After school he became a complete stranger to them. He quickly learned a valuable lesson through these kids. In their world, it was either use or be used. Fast forwarding past a few more tests, which saw Naruto get bumped up to different classes in a matter of months, he soon found himself taking an IQ test that resulted in him being diagnosed with a genius-level intellect greater than any 8-year-old Nara that had ever come into existence. It was also immediately after this test that it was made apparent that Naruto had learned all that he could from the academy, bar killing, and he was completely bored. We would like to personally train him. That was a statement uttered by a man named Uzumaki Jin, the head of their clan. He had heard of Naruto's special intelligence, and as such he had become interested in him. He had come over to Naruto's parents personally in order to ask for permission to train him. Well, it wasn't really a matter that was up for debate, and Naruto's parents knew it. When your clan leader wanted something from you, you did it, regardless of how you felt about it. Not doing so would be seen as an act of insubordination. And everybody knew what that meant for you. Death. Regardless though, Kushina was a proud woman that had built a reputation as a hot-blooded individual, and this made itself apparent almost immediately when she decided to throw caution to the wind and say, "Why? What do you intend to do with my son?" There was no way in hell she would allow her boy to suddenly be thrust into the heat of battle without proper training or before he hit the required age within their clan. She would not allow him to become an exception to the general consensus. "Do not worry, Kushina," Ginrei said, stroking his white beard like the truly ancient person that he was. He had accompanied his son, Jin, to speak with Kushina. Naruto will not leave the island before the age of 12, just like everyone else. Then why do you want to personally train my son? This time it was Minato that had asked, proving that he had a backbone despite not being a shinobi. Because we see in Naruto something that we haven't seen in anyone else for a very long time, Ginrei said cryptically. And that is? Minato asked once more, feeling his irritation rising. He didn't like how Ginrei was dancing around the issue of what they wanted with his son. Possibility. Ginrei said, beard stroking over for now, in Naruto we see the possibility of taking our clan further than where we are. We do not want to make him a weapon, far from it. We want to make him a symbol of peace. Peace, huh? Minato said with a large frown on his face, by turning him into a force of destruction and masquerading it as peace. No, whatever else that Jin was going to say died in his throat when Minato slammed his hand onto the wooden table that they sat in. Damn you. You shinobi don't know anything about peace. You go around murdering people, not giving a damn about the innocents that get caught in the way, and you go around preaching peace. My wife murders people for a living. And now you want to make my son a murderer too. Minato's voice had risen to new heights that seemed uncontrollable. His voice was shaking as he spoke to the clan leader and his predecessor. His wife's soft, and also very warm, hand was all it took to calm him down. She simply placed it on top of his raging fist, and his anger was immediately quelled. She understood his pain, she really did. She didn't want her only child to become a murderer at a young age, but this was just the terrible, cruel reality of the world that they lived in. Just Minato began, stepping out of the chair he sat in, just make sure that he at least has one friend. Kami-sama knows he needs those. With that, the trio of Uzumaki warriors watched Minato walk out of the kitchen with his head held low, knowing very well that there was nothing he could do about his son's situation. They were all sure that he wished that he was different. Not stupid, but significantly less intellectual than he was right now. That way, they would never have had to deal with the bullshit that they were dealt with right now. The Uzumaki leader and his father left not longer after, already making preparations to have Naruto move in with them. He would train with the head family during the week, but be able to visit his family during the weekend. It was a stipulation that Kushina had set, one that they had no problem maintaining. To them, mainly Jin, Naruto was someone that was worth any ridiculous stipulation. Chapter 1. A genius is born. Soft blades of grass were unexpectedly fattened when a blonde-haired boy walked over them. An 8-year-old Naruto was currently walking towards a large house. One which, for the last 2 centuries, has housed the main family of the Uzumaki clan. The house was majestic, looking like a very traditional castle, with an air of pure authority to it. Just looking at it, one knew that they were stepping on important grounds. Grounds nearly as important as the temple located at the center of the village. Naruto walked on the extraordinarily large front lawn of the mansion, marveling at it with eyes the size of saucers, with his beige bag slung attached to his back. Upon stepping onto the patio of the massive mansion, Naruto felt his muscles suddenly locking in place, his nerves not really being able to transmit the message his brain was trying to convey to his limbs. Move. It was a simple command, one which his body just couldn't catch up to. It was as if someone had turned his body into that of a puppet. The more he commanded his body to move, the more it seemed to disobey him. In fact, it almost seemed as if it was giving him the middle finger and going the extra mile in disobedience by disposing of his chakra. Wait. The body doesn't just disobey you and start releasing chakra unless if there's been a jutsu cast on you. Naruto thought. If one were to take a peek into his shiny blue orbs that he had inherited from his father, they would see that he was panicking. A lot. Calm down. He silently told himself, think. Focus on where the chakra is being siphoned off to, so that you can stop it. He slowed his breathing down, calming himself so that he could think. Upon doing so, he was able to immediately notice that his chakra was due south. His eyes were the only thing that could move, and he had to concentrate really hard on looking down. Naruto noticed a ceiling matrix that was large enough to encompass the entire patio. At least, according to his peripheral vision, because it went on beyond it on either side. How do I get rid of that? Only his eyes could move. And that wasn't good. From all of the knowledge he had obtained so far with regards to kinjutsu and how to dispose of it if you were ever trapped in one, you needed to at least have some mobility. He had none. That was not good. You know, a gravely masculine voice said from the sidelines, drawing Naruto's eyes to it, every jutsu has a weakness. Naruto looked at the man, and he saw an old man that had a white beard that reached just below his clavicle. He had white hair that was tied into a ponytail, and he was decked in a gray outfit under a dull red armor. The man looked at Naruto, and the look that was directed at the blonde-haired boy indicated that the old man was expecting him to break the seal. Naruto's eyes shifted away from the old man and looked at the mansion's paper doors. Looking to do exactly what the old man was quietly suggesting, Naruto focused on his chakra. He felt the torrent that ran in between his bones and veins that represented his chakra flow in one direction, south. Knowing that he had a tough task ahead of him, he started trying to change its flow. It wasn't easy, but after a minute of pure concentration, Naruto slowly started to feel his chakra change direction, heading southeast before it went east completely. After that, he shifted it west, before taking it up north, focusing the flow to his brain. Then he stopped focusing on his chakra flowing in a controlled manner and started making it flow in all directions in a very undignified manner. It sauntered all over his chakra coils, making them burn up slightly and drawing a sweat from him. This exercise was exhausting him, as the more he did it, the faster the seal attached to his feet worked. He felt his heartbeat increase, drawing a hyperventilated breath of air out of his lungs. When will this? And then his legs moved forward, and then he shot forward like a bullet, one traveling at a very slow speed of less than 10 kilometers an hour, and he shot through the paper screen of the Uzumaki clan's main house. Ahaha, Naruto inwardly groaned while he slowly picked himself off the ground, pushing a thin sheet with wood attached to it off of him, which clattered on the ground when it struck the wooden floorboards of the house, before he slowly exited the hole he had just made. Looking at the old man that was laughing at his expense, Naruto looked really annoyed. "I'm glad that my misery is amusing to you," Naruto said bitterly. "Hahaha, oh, it was very amusing actually. And also quite insightful," the elderly Uzumaki said. "Oh?" Naruto asked, crossing his arms in the process. "How so?" "You have very good control of your chakra," the old man began, drawing a raised eyebrow out of Naruto. "What you were trapped in is a mass-scale paralysis seal. It actually surrounds the entire house. And the only way to get out of one is with properly controlled chakra fluctuations that go against the seal." Oh. That was what Naruto experienced at that moment. It immediately made sense to him as to why it was there. "I'm guessing that it's meant to keep intruders at bay." Naruto let his thoughts be known. "Yes, it is. Quite perceptive for someone your age," the old man said. "My father always said that one should always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst," Naruto said in a sagely manner, completely unfitting of an 8-year-old. "Ah, I see. Going by what you said, then that means that you know who I am. Hi. You're Ginrei-sama." The old man, Ginrei, nodded his head at the boy before he slowly started stroking his beard. He liked the boy. Honestly, he did. He had a good head on his shoulders. He seemed respectable, and judging by how he reacted throughout the whole ordeal involving the paralysis seal, a very calm individual. "Do you want to know what I know about you?" Ginrei said to the boy. "There's no point in saying no, even though a part of me wants to. So I will just say yes," Naruto answered rather cheekily, showing his immaturity. He can see through the way words are used. A good head for politics. "Your name is Naruto. You like ramen, you hate vegetables. You also happen to be a very smart kid, graduating early from our academy. You reportedly have chakra reserves equal to those of a seasoned shinobi who's 15, while also having immaculate control over it," Ginrei said, pausing to swallow some spittle. "Don't all Uzumaki have large pools of chakra?" Naruto asked. As far as he knew, he was nothing special when it came to chakra quantity. "True, we do have large chakra pools. But the comparison was made with a 15-year-old Uzumaki in mind, not someone from another clan," Ginrei said, drawing a shocked look from the boy. "How do you know this?" "I didn't know that it was possible to measure one's chakra quantity," Naruto said quickly, unfurling his arms and walking away from the hole he made. The old man did not say much. He instead pointed down, causing the boy he was with to look where he was pointing. "The paralysis seal that you were ensnared in is one of my own designs. It ensnares one in a powerful binding spell before it slowly starts sucking out your chakra, that way by the time you figure out how to disable it, you won't have enough chakra to do so." Ginrei said, "You were caught in it for 4 minutes, 10 seconds, which is just how long a 12-year-old Uzumaki would last before he or she actually collapsed from chakra exhaustion." Naruto nodded his head at the beard-stroking man, indicating that he understood what he said. "You appear to have barely felt the drain on your reserves. Let me ask you a question, Naruto." Once again, Naruto nodded his head at the man. This time though, it was a means of telling him to proceed. "Do you know why our clan sends children out to battle only after they have reached the age of 12? Ginrei asked. "No." Naruto shook his head. "I only know that you do it so that we, as the children of the clan, can have normal childhoods free of violence. But I'm guessing that is not the true reason why." Ginrei stopped his beard stroking for a moment, mesmerized by the fact that the boy seemed intelligent enough to guess that the reason that they always dished out in their public service announcements with regards to early graduation was really just a farce. He didn't know how, but he could see through the thinly veiled lie the clan had constructed. Very perceptive indeed. "You're right. The real reason, which I'm not supposed to be telling you due to you being underage, but I will do so anyway because you seem like someone that won't go around spouting what I'm going to say to the general public, is that a shinobi's chakra grows exponentially when they hit puberty. So that means that you can get taught things, more advanced techniques, as you grow older. Which also means that that is when you have the biggest growth spurt as a shinobi. If you don't take advantage of it then it will definitely go to waste," Ginrei said, stroking his beard once more while looking at the hole Naruto made. Naruto, meanwhile, had one simple, yet very confusing question rolling around in his head. "What's puberty?" Suffice to say that Ginrei wished he had not told Naruto one of the clan secrets. A very awkward few minutes later, Naruto, after being told what he would be going through in a few years' time minus the explicit details about coitus, now found himself in the Uzumaki clan's main house's lounge. He was told by Ginrei to wait there, and he did. Ginrei, despite exuding an air of authority, seemed like he was a fun-loving person. Naruto came to this conclusion after they had used the hole he had made in the screen as an entrance into the house. When Naruto had asked him why they hadn't used the normal entrance, he replied with a simple, "What's wrong with the door that you just made?" So yes, judging by those words, the old man seemed like a bit of a rebel, which honestly wasn't what Naruto had expected when he got to know the elder Uzumaki a bit. According to what Naruto had read up on the man, yes, Ginrei was so important that he had written text talking about him. He was a child prodigy, so gifted in kinjutsu that he surpassed his father, the greatest at the time, at just the age of 20, which was a record. He was the one that had come up with the academy system, choosing to find a place where a lot of Uzumaki children could be taught at the same time, thus making sure that they were all more or less around the same skill level. His mind was so sharp that he was dubbed Ginrei the Wise. With all of these things in mind, he had expected someone that was stoic, like most clan leaders were, at least that is what he had heard through the grapevine. Clan leaders were notorious stoic. He didn't expect to find a man that seemed carefree, who seemingly had a sense of humor, while also able to exude power and authority like it was child's play. Which, Naruto concluded, probably was for the man. The lounge. Naruto heard Ginrei shout from somewhere within the house. He heard footsteps coming from the hallway that was to the right-hand side of the lounge when you exited it, and he focused his attention onto the entrance that led to and from the hall. The footsteps grew louder and louder, heightening Naruto's sense of anticipation for whoever was running towards him. He was a kid that had only recently discovered what puberty was. He couldn't help feeling anxious, genius or not. His anxiety came to an end when the person that had been running in the hall came to a screeching halt at the entryway. Purple stared at blue. Red buns were parallel with golden yellow spikes. Tan skin contorted to match its pale counterpart. And then there was a smile. A megawatt smile that showed of a set of pearly whites. "You're Naruto, right?" the girl said to him. "Yeah," Naruto said, drawing out his response as if he was not really being sure that was his name. "Great." The girl with a megawatt smile said, clapping her pale hands together in a cheerful manner, "I'm Mito." Naruto was quiet for a few seconds, not really sure about how he should proceed. Make sure to always be respectful to the main family. His mother's words rang in his head, and immediately after that he said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mito-sama." Naruto bowed his head when he said this, eliciting a raised eyebrow from Mito. Why are you bowing at me?" Mito asked him, and when Naruto looked at her after bowing his head, he noticed that she was looking at him like he had grown a second head. "I'm being respectful towards you, Mito-sama," Naruto said, a bit unsure of himself. "Huh?" Mito tilted her head slightly, looking at the boy that seemed to be around her age, with pure confusion. "I thought friends weren't supposed to bow at each other." "Friends?" Naruto exclaimed in shock. He didn't have many if any friends. "Yes. We're friends, aren't we?" Mito may have said it like a question, but Naruto somehow got the impression that it was anything but that. "Make sure to always be respectful to the main family." His mother's words ringing in his head once more, he quickly said, "Why yes. We're friends." Naruto was quickly coming to the conclusion that he was very wrong about how he had thought the main family would be. He had guessed that they would actually be uptight individuals that demanded respect, but his interaction with Ginrei and Mito told him otherwise. They seemed like they were the total opposite of what he had expected to find. It was at that moment that Ginrei walked up to Mito and pushed her inside the lounge lightly, eliciting a yelp from the girl, and then a snarl immediately afterwards. Behind Ginrei was a man that had hair that was as red as Mito's, while also sporting a large scar that went across his left cheek. "You really need to learn how to be patient, child." Ginrei chided the girl, who simply folded her arms at his comment and then chose to stick her nose in the air while closing her eyes. Naruto watched their interaction with an amused expression before he felt something akin to a single ray of light trying to pierce his skull. When his eyes drifted towards the source of this invisible discomfort, he found the man that had been walking with Ginrei staring at him with a huge frown on his face. Staring was actually putting this into a lighter perspective. No. The man was literally drilling into him with his eyes. This made Naruto very uncomfortable, very fast. The man had, in a few seconds, managed to take away the friendly atmosphere that had been exuded by Ginrei and Mito. He made Naruto want to look away, which he did. The boy chose to focus his eyes on some of the paintings on the wall, noticing how each of them depicted a great warrior riding a horse into battle, or a man fighting a beast of some kind. Looking at these things did not make Naruto feel any relief from the drilling session. In fact, it only intensified it more, to the point where he started shuffling his feet a bit and was thinking about turning and making a run for it through the hole he had made before. "Jin, stop." Ginrei said, and then all of a sudden, whatever pressure Naruto had felt was suddenly lifted off of him. He looked up at Ginrei and found that the old man was looking at the man, Jin, with a disapproving look. "So you're Kushina's son?" Jin said in a slow yet very authoritative manner, drawing Naruto's attention to him. Naruto didn't know what to say, or do for that matter. Jin was different from Mito or Ginrei. He exuded power. He had complete command of everything that happened within this room. He could end Naruto's life quicker than he could blink, and Naruto knew it. Still, though, Naruto had some brain power left in him, which he used to answer the man, although it was a bit too timid for his liking. Hi. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Jin. I know who you are, Jin-sama, Naruto said, bowing his head at the man, and it's an honor and a pleasure to meet you. That was all the man said, before he turned around and left, his black robes fluttering around his feet. Naruto knew who the man was. He was their clan's leader. Someone that had a fearsome reputation as a monster on the battlefield. Where his father, Ginrei, had excelled in kinjutsu, Jin had excelled in taijutsu and kinjutsu. He had a body that was both strong, yet also lithe enough that he was both quick on his feet, yet also strong when necessary. Many said that he was blessed with the body of a god, and it seemed like they were right. Naruto honestly thought that the man could challenge the gods if he sought to. He looked absolutely menacing. Ahem. Ginrei's voice drew Naruto's mind away from his thoughts. I hope my son's charm didn't scare you, Naruto. Yeah. Mito said in support of her grandfather, their earlier spat lay forgotten, what Jai-chan said. Honestly, Naruto said, swallowing some saliva, it does scare me, actually. Oh. Both, the Uzumaki elder and his granddaughter, said in unison. It doesn't mean I won't get over it, though. Naruto said confidently, with a raised fist. Both main family members smiled up at each other upon seeing Naruto's determination but for different reasons, and one particular reason at the same time. The reason that they shared was that if Naruto wanted to, he could leave. However, neither wanted him to do so, and this is where the different reasons came into play. Yay. Mito said, running up to Naruto and grabbing his hand before pulling him away, I finally got a friend. Ginrei watched them run past him, his energetic red-haired granddaughter pulling a slightly stupefied Naruto as they exited the lounge, with a soft expression at first, but when they left the room completely, his expression turned to stone. It was hard for his granddaughter to make friends, considering that she was royalty among Uzumaki. Not even coaxing certain elders' grandchildren had been enough because they all immediately fell into the same line of obedience and ass-kissing as the rest of the clan, and Mito did not need, nor did she want, that. She just wanted to have a normal friendship. He audibly sighed out loud before he said, you have so many challenges awaiting you, child. Least of all from my son. Ginrei proceeded to cross his hands behind his back and slowly exit the lounge. He would let the boy and Mito get familiar with each other for today. Tomorrow is when Naruto's true purpose for coming to his house would begin. To be continued. Chapter 2. Training Day. Chapter 2. Training Day. Beautiful morning sunshine, some gorgeous greenery and lots of fresh air. That was what assaulted Naruto's sense of touch, sight and smell respectively. He was currently standing in the middle of a very luscious training field, one designed specifically for the main family of his clan. The clearing that he was in was so large that the closest tree was actually an entire half a kilometer away. Unfortunately for him, though, the beauty that could be associated with the training field was completely lost to him due to one very important fact. He was not alone. He was currently standing in the training field with the ever-oppressive leader of their clan, Jin. Jin was decked out in a black guy, while Naruto was dressed in a murky gray-colored variant. Jin had a pair of G-string sandals on, easily the most worn shoe in the world, while Naruto was barefoot. Alright, boy, the powerful and very commanding voice of Jin said, looking down at the boy, I hope my father was able to relay your schedule to you yesterday. Hi. Naruto answered the man, looking up at him. The man may have had an oppressive aura to him, but Naruto was his mother's child. Uzumaki Kushina was notoriously stubborn, and Naruto would be lying to himself if he said that he did not get at least a fraction of her stubborn nature. Before we begin, I want to make a few things clear. Jin said, looking at the child with an unreadable expression etched onto his face. If Jin were honest with himself, he didn't like the boy much if at all for personal reasons. The way in which the boy was no longer shuffling under his gaze, but rather staring up at him defiantly, irked him a little. The fact that the boy also took his pause as a means of him asking for permission to speak to him, to which the boy had nodded his head at him to do so, also aggravated him a bit. I wasn't asking for permission to speak, brat. Jin said a bit menacingly, making Naruto gulp a little, nowhere's what I wanted to say. You're a smart boy, smarter than anyone that has come before you apparently. Naruto could almost taste the but that was coming. But, and he had been on the money, I don't see it. To me you're just a worm, an insignificant insect that I could crush if I wanted to, but I won't. My father sees value in you. In other words, training me was actually your father's idea and not really yours, Jin-sama. Naruto concluded in his head. In all honesty, it put to rest the theory he had developed last night before he went to bed. He could tell from his first interaction with Jin-sama that the man did not like him, not one bit. Yet he had invited him to his home in order to train him. It didn't make sense to the genius 8-year-old. And now he had just confirmed his assumption. Secondly, Jin's thoughts broke his own thoughts. I want to make this very clear. If you complain, if you cry, if you so much as ask for a break when I haven't offered you one, you will be punished severely. The boy nodded at the man, a bit too fearful for his own liking. The more time he spent with Jin, the less he liked his clan's leader. And now the final thing I wanted to savory training session that we have shall be held at this time. Jin said, making Naruto nod once more. They had gotten out of bed at 5 and it was a few minutes before 6 from what Naruto could tell. I do not tolerate tardiness. Good thing Naruto's father was such an early riser because he had pretty much instilled the same sense of hard work into his son, unlike Kushina, who was a heavy sleeper. Naruto nodded once more, showing his leader and teacher just how much he understood what he had said. Good. Now then, we are going to spar a little. Jin said, this will give me a chance to see what you are made of. Today, we will only focus on Taijutsu. Tomorrow is Kinjutsu. And we will alternate it between the two every second day. Am I understood? Hi. Naruto said. Naruto found himself flying through the air and landing on his back a few feet away from the man, thanks to a shove that was initiated by the leader of the Uzumaki clan, who spoke immediately after Naruto hit the ground. Hi, sensei. Naruto stood up and dusted himself off a little before he looked at his teacher and said, hi, sensei. Good. The man said, now come at me with the intent to kill, anything else would be but a waste of my time and yours. Naruto's sharp little mind was able to piece together why the man wanted him to attack him in such a manner. There was no way an 8-year-old was ever going to be able to take on a clan leader, so even if he did want to kill him, Naruto was but a speck of dirt when compared to his leader. But this in mind, the blonde obliged to his teacher's instruction. 3.5 hours later, Uzumaki main house. Tired. Absolutely goddamn tired. That was how Naruto felt after a 3-hour workout session with Jin. The man had proceeded to curb stomp him into the ground in their spar, showcasing the difference between a man and a boy, a leader and a soldier. The kimono top that once hung nicely to Naruto's body was now slumped over onto the right, meaning that the right shoulder was exposed to the air. His pants were much better since they were held up by a piece of cloth tied around his waist tightly. As Naruto continued his procession in the house of their esteemed asshole, a conclusion Naruto reached very quickly later. Naruto passed 2 women that he had not seen the previous day, and they were decked in white. Naruto thought for a second, watching them talk amongst themselves while they carried some folded clothes, and another carried a broom and a bucket of water that was half full. Must be the servants. Naruto concluded. He hadn't seen them yesterday, but then considering that he had arrived late in the afternoon the previous day, then that meant that the servants either left early or they didn't work every day. Upon passing them, however, he soon forgot about them and his mind decided to remind of his fatigue. Jin was a monster when it came to Taijutsu, that much had been obvious to Naruto. His teachers in the academy didn't hold a candle to the man. Naruto, by the time he graduated, could land a few hits on his instructors when they were actually serious. Jin on the other was leaps and bounds ahead of him in this shinobi discipline. The wood creaked tiredly from under his feet, which were sore from all of the sprinting he had done this morning. He silently mused to himself, remembering the training he had just been put through for the next several minutes, never really taking heed to where he was headed. After all, he had memorized the map of the house last night. Naruto was brought back to reality when he suddenly found himself in front of a paper door that led into a room that he was told he would meet Ginrei in. Taking a deep breath to compose himself, Naruto slid the screen to the side, allowing him entrance into the room. Upon entering the room, Naruto was greeted by the sight of Ginrei kneeling on the wooden floor of the large and very empty room, dressed in a green kimono top and a black pair of pants. Kneeling a few feet in front of Ginrei was a small bundle of white clothes and red hair that Naruto was able to immediately associate with the girl that had practically strong-armed him into being her friend. Okay, not really strong-armed, but he did not have much of a choice. As soon as he entered the room, he was immediately assaulted by Mito's smaller frame. She crashed into him, wrapping her hands around him and holding onto him for dear life, as if he would disappear if she let go. Middlings. Naruto managed to rasp out as he lightly tapped her on her shoulder. Oh, sorry. Mito said sheepishly, immediately letting go of him and taking a step back. She had an innocently apologetic look on her face as she scratched her chin a little bit while saying, I'm sorry, it's just that I thought that you weren't coming. I told you he was, child. An irate-looking Ginrei said from the sidelines. Nobody asked for your input, Jai-chan. Mito shot over her shoulder at her grandfather, leaving him a bit stupefied. Mito. Naruto began, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder, drawing her attention away from her grandfather. What on earth would make you think that I wouldn't make it? Mito looked down, trying to hide the blush she sported from Naruto, and said, I know how Otu-sama can be a bit too much. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow at her answer, huh? She feared that her father would have broken your spirit after just one day. Ginrei said from the sidelines. And why on earth would you think that could happen? Naruto questioned both the old man and the girl. Because you are not the first student to walk through these doors. Ginrei answered, his wrinkled finger pointing at the screen Naruto had just entered through. What? Naruto was perplexed by what the old man said. A few years ago, Mito said softly, choosing to look at her feet rather than the blonde she was speaking to, Ken Nai-san, left. Nai-san. Naruto felt the words roll out of his mouth before he could stop them. Of course he knew what she meant when she said the word Nai-san. Hi. Mito said, still choosing to look down at her feet. His reason for leaving was that he was tired of father always bullying him whenever they trained together. Naruto could see the solemn expressions that both grandfather and granddaughter shared. Whoever this Ken person had been, he had been a fundamental part of their lives until the day he left. Mito, who had been trying very hard to hold back the tears at the memory of her brother, suddenly felt something warm touch her chin. When said warm thing had forced her to look up, she noticed that it was Naruto's hand. She also noticed that the blonde was looking at her with a confident smile on his face. Hey, he said softly, using his thumb to caress her cheek in slow circles, trying to calm her down the same way that his mother used to when he was younger. Mito instinctively leaned her head into the soft ministrations of her friend, which also caused her eyes to become half-lidded. I'm not going anywhere, alright. Mito didn't know how, but she felt the honesty that was in his words in her heart. She could see it in his eyes. He was being completely honest, and she liked it. Oh, and the soft touches too. They made her feel something unexplainable. Nice, but unexplainable. Your father's training may be tough, but I am tougher. Naruto said confidently, his smile broadening ever so slightly, I won't be going anywhere until I am done with it. Okay. She nodded her head at him. Good. Now don't cry. Naruto said cheekily. Mito slapped his hand away and said, I wasn't crying. Yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. I said no. Yes. No. No. Yes. And then Mito realized her mistake. Judging from the smirk that Naruto gave her, though, it was too late. Got you? Was all he said, before moving his way past her, looking to get his lesson with the softly snickering Ginrei started. Well done, Naruto. Ginrei said, behind the still and shocked Mito. What did I do? Naruto asked innocently. You did something I've never been able to do. You shut my granddaughter up. Ginrei said. That, unfortunately, had been the last thing either of them got to say. Mito, with her budding feminine fury, reared her head at them like an animal that had just turned on its master and shouted her lungs off, you shut up, you stupid geezer. She then set her sights on Naruto and pointed her index finger at him, and you. That is the last time I will ever worry about you, okay? Good. She then plopped herself onto the ground unceremoniously and folded her arms while also emitting an audible huff and looking away from them both. Both males looked at each other in shock, then at Mito, before looking at each other again, before they simply shrugged their shoulders in unison. Naruto, sit down. Ginrei ordered him a few seconds after their joint shoulder shrug. Naruto did as requested by the old man. Well, I had originally intended for you and Mito to begin at the same time. Ginrei said, before he looked at his very annoyed granddaughter with a mischievous look in his eyes, but then I guess she's just going to have to settle with being behind you. I mean, she is a year younger than you, right Naruto? Naruto could clearly see what the old man was trying to do. The elderly Uzumaki was trying to make Mito jealous. It seemed to be working if Mito's facial expression was anything to go by. She went from being annoyed and in ignore mode to being shocked and afraid. Afraid of being left behind by her friend. Naruto knew that he had to choose his next words carefully, for they could be detrimental to his forced friendship with the Uzumaki heiress. You know, I think it would be best if we waited for her. Naruto said, eyes darting back and forth between grandfather and granddaughter. He saw Ginrei look at him a bit skeptically for some odd reason, while the corner of Mito's lips curved upward slightly, signaling that she was pleased by what he had said and that her ignore mode was over. And no, Hidekae'll be joining you. She said, making Naruto sigh internally. Both children turned to look at Ginrei, who looked shocked for reasons that neither child could fathom, before he simply smiled at them both and said, alright. Let us begin. A few hours later, a soft patter of feet on wood alerted Naruto to someone coming into the room that he was using as his own. He had just taken a nice warm bath and he was feeling refreshed. Tired, but refreshed. Looking at the shadow that approached his door, Naruto was able to quickly surmise who it was without them saying a word. Come in, Mito. He said. How did you know that it was me? The girl asked, feeling rather annoyed by the fact the blonde was able to figure out it was her. The two small but parallel balls stuck onto a larger ball that the shadow indicated were a dead giveaway. Although he was not going to tell her that. Genius, remember? He said smiling at her. I don't know, Mito said playfully, looking at the blonde dressed in a white robe, indicating that he just took a bath. All I see is an idiot. An idiot that's already ahead of you in kinjutsu. Naruto said cheekily, sticking out his tongue in order to add insult to injury. Mito faltered a bit, not really able to create a good comeback, but she did settle for saying, whatever, I will catch up to you eventually. Whatever lets you sleep at night. Naruto said, turning his back on her and walking towards the walk-in closet that was in his room before he shut it. Hey, it's only been one day. Mito replied, looking to get the last word in. It seemed to work, as Naruto didn't bother with replying. Naruto was busy fiddling with the contents of the bag he had brought with him the previous day. The sack-like bag contained 5 scrolls, each one containing something of his. Throwing the one that contained all of his formal clothing aside, he took the one that had all of his nightwear. He unfurled the scroll before channeling bits of his rather large chakra into it, and he got the desired result of watching his jinbei, traditional Japanese pajamas, pop into existence. Naruto, as quickly as his tired aching body would allow him to, put them on before he left the confines of the walk-in closet. Upon doing so, he found Mito sitting on the ultra-padded futon that he had slept in last night. Seriously, these guys sleep in style. Naruto had concluded. He had never seen a futon with padding so thick before. Mito was quietly drawing kanji on a little scroll that she had. Every time she wrote incorrect kanji, it would simply disappear. Which meant that the only way she could be sure that she had written the right thing was if the kanji stayed in place. Sorry to make you wait. Naruto said, quickly plopping himself down on the soft futon. Mito just nodded her head. Naruto chose to keep quiet and watch Mito do her thing. The 7-year-old girl turned her head to look at the boy next to her with curious eyes. She noticed that he was staring intently at her hands as she wrote on the scroll. It's ma not na. She heard him say, add a curve at the top. Her eyes went back to the scroll and stayed on it as she decided to heed his advice. She redrew the kanji that had just disappeared, but she added a slight curve at the top and watched in fascination as the kanji stayed put. Wow, you really are a genius. She said before she could stop herself. It's just kanji, nothing special. Naruto said. He may have sounded arrogant, but he was anything but. Still, you know how to write perfectly, and you're only 8. She said, turning to look at Naruto. So? He said in genuine curiosity. He wanted to know what was so special about him being able to write at the age of 8. Ani-chan was only able to perfectly write at the age of 10. Jai-chan said he learned how to write perfectly when he was 9. Mito stressed. Naruto had a raised eyebrow at that comment. I still don't see your point. Mito huffed out loud before shoving the scroll and the brush into his lap and said, hold this. She stood up and walked over to the small cabinet that was next to the futon. The cabinet had an oil lamp on it and 3 drawers. Pulling on one of the drawers, Mito brought forth what Naruto assumed was rice paper. Mito turned around and showed him what was written on the piece of paper. It was the kanji for 10. Done crudely at that. What is that? Naruto asked. It's Ani-chan's. He had a habit of always writing his favorite number. The number 10. And this is one he did when he was your age. Mito stated. Naruto blinked owlishly, only now understanding why she made such a big issue out of him being able to write kanji neatly. If what he saw truly was Ken's handwriting at the age of 8, then the guy was terrible. He was absolutely horrendous. Damn, even Mito writes better than him. He must be terrible at kinjutsu with handwriting like that. Naruto's thoughts reverberated through his mind. And here he was thinking that a 4-year-old wrote that. Then again, he was comparing it to his 4-year-old self. The Kafin. You win. Naruto said, throwing his hands up in the air in defeat. I didn't realize that we were playing a game. Mito said while shoving her brother's piece of paper back in the drawer. The girl returned to sit next to him before prying the scroll out of the boy's hands and continuing with her writing skills. They stayed silent for a really long time, with only the occasional word of advice from Naruto on how Mito should write her kanji. Was this Ken-sama's room? Naruto asked after there had been a long bout of silence between them. Yes, it is. Mito said, looking at the scroll in her lap. I see was all Naruto said. He silently wondered where her older brother had gone off to. Whenever somebody leaves their clan, they are immediately placed within the wanted books. Every clan had a wanted book. A 6-year-old Naruto sat comfortably in his room, going over a scroll that was unfurled on his lap. The scroll's contents were a bit lost to him, as it spoke of something he could not understand. Luckily for him, he knew someone that could help. Jumping to his feet, the little boy left his room, with the scroll in hand. He quickly rushed down the steps of his home, all the while shouting, Akasan, Akasan. What is it, Tabeo? Uzumaki Kushina's slightly annoyed voice rang from the kitchen. Naruto's soft feet hurried towards her location, and upon entering the kitchen he found his mother, the one person that could help him. Akasan, I need your help with something. Naruto softly asked his mother. What is it? Kushina said while wiping her hands dry using a dishcloth. It's an assignment from school. Naruto handed his mother the scroll. Kushina looked at the scroll's contents, picking out the question that Naruto needed help with. Clans have been known to work together over the years, even rival clans. What is the name of the special condition that has to be met when they do so? Kushina read the question out loud before a smile graced her soft pink lips as she said, well, that's easy. It's during a wanted case. Wanted case? Naruto asked, all of his innocence coming to the forefront. Yes, wanted case. Kushina said, handing the scroll back to her son. Naruto jotted down what he needed to with his brush, and once he was done doing so he looked up at his mother, who was looking down at him expectantly. Anything else I can help you with? Kushina asked. Not really. But I just wanted to know what is a wanted case. Go took a seat. It's a bit of a long explanation. Naruto heeded his mom's advice and sat down on the floor around the table he had just used to write his answer on a few moments ago. Okay. Kushina said, exhaling a bit, feeling herself go into teacher mode. The wanted case is one that involves the wanted books. You know what those are, right? A shake of the head was the only answer she was given, prompting Kushina to sigh out loud while before adding, what do they teach you guys, nowadays? Mathematics, kinjutsu, ninjutsu, taijutsu, jinjutsu, literature. It was a rhetorical question, son. Kushina's face sported a warm smile as she leaned forward and ruffled her son's hair a little bit. Honestly, despite all of his intelligence, he was still only 6 years old. Naruto just calmly let his mother ruffle his, already unruly, hair. Trying to fight of his mother would only lead to further embarrassment. Besides, he secretly enjoyed it. Well, his mother said, getting on with her lesson, I guess the best way to explain a wanted book is they are a series of books kept by every clan. They contain information of everything that a clan wants, well, only the things that they want known to the world at least. Like? Naruto innocently queried. A hidden treasure, some medicine plant or even another shinobi that they want dead. Why would they want people to know about a hidden treasure? I mean, wouldn't they be better served if the treasure was only known by the clan? True, but then sometimes it happens that someone else stumbles upon something that, well, they think it is useless, someone else would pay a lot of money for. Such as what exact, Aka-san? Well, let me think of an exam. Aha, got it. Kushina snapped her thumbs triumphantly as she looked at the ceiling before she looked back at her only child and said, well, I know for instance that certain jutsu scrolls or information pertaining to certain jutsu is highly valuable. For instance, I once heard that the Uchiha clan are willing to pay 100,000 ryo for concrete information on the hachiman. What's a hachiman? The hachiman is a technique that allows you to increase your body's strength exponentially. It's a short-lived power boost, but very handy. Only several people throughout history have been seen using it because it's too complex for ordinary shinobi to utilize. It's said that complete mastery of the hachiman can make you the strongest person in the world. That's so cool. Naruto had stars in his eyes, just picturing himself throwing around the 5 elements like a god. No, not cool. Kushina said sternly, pointing her index finger threateningly at her son, if one were to use the full power of the hachiman they can destroy an entire clan, but at the end of it all, they would die. Naruto swallowed thickly upon hearing that someone could die from using the hachiman. As unbelievably powerful as it was too dangerous to use. He did not want to die. And another thing. Kushina said, if the Uchiha were to get their hands on it, no clan, not even ours, would be safe. They would literally take over the world. Even with just partial mastery of the hachiman, you are considered one of the strongest in the world. Just thinking about a world ruled by the Uchiha and their red demonic eyes that he had only seen illustrations of sent a shiver down Naruto's spine. Most kids his age would not understand the full implications of what his mother had said, but he did. The Uchiha would be unstoppable. An entire clan of hachiman utilizing jutsu wielders too scary. Okay, Naruto concluded, not cool. Not one bit. There was a few moments of silence between mother and son before Naruto asked another question. I understand the treasure part now. The medicine part is self-explanatory, but what about the shinobi part? Why would clans advertise who they wanted dead? Kushina took on a thinking pose as she thought of the best possible way to explain things to her son. She entertained the idea of using herself as an example before she shut it down for something a bit more progressive. Imagine this, you're a very strong shinobi and you get into a skirmish with Wade, which clan do you detest the most? Naruto thought about what his mother was asking him for a second before the answer formulated in his mind, none. Really? Kushina asked with a raised eyebrow. Yep. None. Her son replied. Well I'll be. They used to teach us to hate the Uchiha because they were the natural enemy of the Senju, but now it seems as if they don't do that anymore. Kushina thought out loud before she quickly said, anyway, for the purpose of this conversation, let's use another example then. Kushina took a thinking pose once again, trying to see what she could draw upon from her many years of service to her clan. Eventually finding what she was looking for, the Uzumaki Kunoichi said there had been a case a few years ago where a man that was part of the Kagaya clan of Mizu no Kuni had decided to cut all ties with his clan and he left them. He was someone that had killed a lot of people and when the vapor specialists, the Terumi, had found out they contacted the Kagaya and decided to eliminate him together. Naruto scratched his head in such a cute manner that it made Kushina want to squeal in delight. It honestly reminded her of an animal cub scratching its ear. Why? Why what? Why did the Terumi clan get involved in a matter that was clearly not theirs to concern themselves with? Kushina smiled at her son's quick thinking because the man had apparently killed more than 15 Terumi clan members before he defected from the Kagaya. The Kagaya wanted him dead because they wanted him to serve as an example of why you should never betray them, family or not. I see, Naruto said, finally understanding what his mom was saying. What happened to the man? Well, the information about his defection was placed in the red book. When your name enters into the wanted books, you become public enemy number whatever. Only your strength and your pursuer's determination to exterminate you determines how high you are placed. To the Kagaya and the Terumi, he was public enemy number 1. I'm guessing that they found him and tortured to death. And what gave you that gruesome impression? Shinobi torture and kill, it's the world we live in. I guess so. Kushina looked at her son with adoration. She could see his small yet very brilliant mind trying to sort through everything he had been told. She loved her son, oh so very much. His cute chubby cheeks just made her want to hold him and squeeze him like a teddy bear. She was cut off from her musings when she smelled something burn. Holy shit, the food. Kushina did not realize that she had just cursed in front of her son and he had picked it up. He did not say anything, however. He simply chose to slip away from the kitchen while his mother fretted over the burning meal. Hey, is your brother in one of the wanted books? Naruto asked innocently, but he soon regretted it because of the way Mito reacted. Her whole body turned stiff as a wall, but she quickly shook her head immediately afterwards. Oh. Was Naruto's reply, sorry. Mito didn't say anything, she just slowly stood up and then she sauntered to the door. She pushed the screen aside before she stepped out of her older brother's room. Good night. She said a bit too quietly for Naruto's liking before she shut the screen without even looking at him. Naruto was left all alone in his room to think about what had just happened. Naruto was not much for swearing, in fact he abhorred it. Yet at the same time he felt like doing so at that particular moment. So he had chosen the least vulgar word that he knew of. Shit. He had screwed up with that last question. Elsewhere, when an ant looks at the world it sees everything as gigantic. Something that humans deem small and insignificant could mean something else to an ant, usually certain doom. If one were to look at the world from an ant's point of view, then the stamp that Jin was using in order to officiate the document in front of him would seem really large. The almost inaudible thud of the stamp being slammed onto the piece of parchment would seem like an earthquake. One relatively short-lived earthquake. Ginrei's voice caused the paper stamping to cease for the time being as Jin looked up from his paper and noticed his father's silhouette at the paper door. I'm coming in. That was all the warning he was going to get as his father sauntered into the office of the Uzumaki clan head. Sit, father. Was all Jin said to the man. Ginrei's face showed his displeasure at his son's treatment of him. Please, as if I needed your permission to do that, especially in an office I have occupied for more than half a century. Jin never looked up at his father as he furiously worked away at the papers that were in front of him. Be that as it may, it's my office now, and if I wished it, I could have you removed from it. Jin's incessant working made him miss his father's frown. Ginrei did not know why, but he should have been used to this now. His son was as rude to him as he was towards everyone within the clan, with a select few here and there. Quickly schooling his features into a neutral expression, the old man said, I wanted to discuss Naruto's first day in training. What's there to discuss? Jin said, still not bothering with looking up, it's only been one day. The former leader of the Uzumaki clan reached up and started his customary beard stroking. Yes, and in that one day the boy looks like he was put in an abattoir. There was nothing said on Jin's part, he instead focused on the papers that were in front of him. This continued for a few seconds before he felt his father's intense gaze on him, prompting him to look up from his work and see his father's furious gaze matching his own cold, uncaring one. What? Jin's tone matched his facial expression. What did you do to the boy? His father's rage could be felt through the question. Jin watched the blonde Uzumaki boy move about. He was quick on his feet, he would give him that, but his attacks left a lot to be desired. They lacked any real power that he, at the same age, had long since obtained. Parrying another strike to the head before delivering a palm thrust to the boy's chest, Jin watched in impassiveness as Naruto picked himself off the ground. The boy's outfit had grass stains on it from all of the times he had fallen flat on his back. Stop. He told the boy in a calm manner, befitting an individual such as him, to which the boy complied with. I have seen enough. He told the boy, and I have to say that I am disappointed. Genius of the Uzumaki, my foot. Naruto was pretty sure that he wasn't supposed to hear that last part, but he didn't care. Unlike most people, he didn't live for the sole purpose of getting his clan head's recognition. He didn't really care what Jin thought of him, and he had a feeling that Jin knew so. "Well, you are very quick on your feet, boy," he paused a bit. "What for?" Naruto didn't know. "You are also very weak in terms of physical strength. So here is what I am going to do. I am going to have to work with you on increasing your upper body strength while also keeping you light on your feet." The boy was fast, exceptionally so, for an 8-year-old. Once again, Naruto nodded in understanding. "We'll begin that now." Quicker than Naruto could follow, Jin shoved his hand into the ground and withdrew a chunk of it, holding it up for the world to see. "You will take this," he threw the large rock at Naruto, who caught it with a loud huff, "and you will run around the edge of the clearing at full sprint." Naruto swallowed thickly upon realizing that the circumference of the clearing was 1 whole kilometer, meaning that is how much he would have to run, at full sprint. Oh, he was fucked. "Nothing," Jin answered coolly. "It better be. I don't want you to treat him as an anvil to pound out your frustrations." "What are you talking about, old man? I know you hate the boy because he reminds of what you've always wanted but could never have." "Shut up," Jin said, striking the small table he knelt in front of with all of the might he could master, which resulted in the table taking on the form of 2 hemispheres like a brain. Ray knew he had struck a nerve with his son, but he needed to say what was on his mind, or else he would continue to torture the boy that was left in their care. "Why?" "Because you, boy, seem to have me confused with those of the clan that fear you," Ray said, his eyes becoming as ice cold as his son's in an instant. "I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. Remember that when speaking to me." Jin knew his father was serious. This man was one of the most dangerous men alive. He was the strongest Uzumaki alive, despite his age. If provoked, he could kill him. After all, it nearly happened once. The boy Jin began, trying and failing, to control his rage at having been treated like a child. "He means nothing to me beyond being a tool I can utilize to take the clan to new heights. That's the only reason why I agreed to this idea of yours, father." "So he does not have any emotional effect on you, in any way?" Ray asked, although he already knew the answer. "No," Jin answered. Ray would have frowned if he could at that moment, but he was too cross with his son to do so. His son did just lie to him about Naruto not having any effect on him. "Good. See to it that it stays this way," Ray said coldly. Honestly, his son brought out the worst in him at times. Getting up, the old man marched towards the paper door that would lead out of his son's office. "I got a letter." But he was stopped by his son's voice. "From whom?" Ray asked, spinning on his heels to get a look at his son. "Our distant cousins. And what do they want now? Another one of us to teach them how to seal? Or are they still trying to get us to catch them a bitch?" Honestly, the supposed greatest clan in the world that mastered everything were a pain in the back at times, even to their relatives. None, fortunately. Bitsuma Dono just lost a son, and he wanted to take his remaining 3 on a trip to see our island. Jin answered his father with neutrality. He could see it in his father's eyes. The old man did not believe a single word of what Bitsuma's letter had said. He had ulterior motives. That man was always scheming. And honestly, he shared his father's sentiment. It was one of the few things that they could agree upon. Senju Bitsuma was as slimy as an Uchiha. "I see," was all the old man said, his mind running at a mile a minute. He had so many thoughts that ran through his mind, and when he saw his son's eyes, he knew that the same could be said for the young man. "What do you think about all of this, Jin?" "I don't know what to think. But I know that whatever it is, we have a few months to prepare," Jin answered, scratching his chin. "How many to be exact?" Ray asked, stroking his beard. 3 months. There was a few moments of silence, as neither father or son said anything. Ray's feet shuffled to the door before his hand slid it open and walked out of the room, realizing that he had a huge job on his hands. Getting Jin to ease up on Naruto and to also deal with this mess that was coming with the Senju. Those morons were probably going to ask his clan to join in their silly skirmishes with the Uchiha and whatever other clan they dared cross paths with, or a clan that dared to cross paths with them. Honestly, why was he still alive? To be continued. Chapter 3. Family. The sound of rain pelting a windowpane was all Naruto could hear when his mind came out of his dreamless sleep. He slowly got out of his bed and sauntered over to the window. Peeling the curtain open, he was able to get a good view of the terrible weather outside. Sighing to himself, the boy let go of the curtain, knowing it would correct itself, as he quickly left his bedroom. He left his room and went into the upstairs bathroom of his parents' house. He was back here, at the house where he was born, for the weekend. It was his first weekend back home, and his parents' plan of spending the day outside with a family picnic had just been shoved down the drain. He did not really care, though. Whether it was inside or outside, he just wanted to spend some time with his family. Quickly taking care of his morning rituals, he left the bathroom and went back into his room. He quickly sorted out his bed, making sure that it was neatly arranged for when he returned later on at night for his sleep. He left the bedroom not long after. Walking into the living room, he found his father sitting there with a deck of cards laid out in front of him. His father, a man he had inherited his looks from, looked up at him as soon as he made his presence known. "You're up now, finally." The blue pants and green kimono top wearing man said to his son. "How long have you been waiting for me?" Naruto asked his father as he sat down on cushion that was on the opposite side of his father's table. Minato placed his right index finger on his chin and lightly tapped it. 10 minutes, I think. I see. Naruto said as he took the cards that were laid out in front of his father and he started shuffling them. "Well, what are we playing first?" "Your call, kiddo." His dad answered. Naruto loved his father to bits. The man was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most calm individual Naruto had ever seen. Naruto sometimes entertained the fantasy that his father would have made for a truly frightening shinobi had he been introduced to the art from an early age instead of being a carpenter. "Alright." Naruto proceeded to lay out the cards he had just finished shuffling in front of his dad for a game of crazy eights before a question popped into his head. "Where's mom?" "She went shopping for things you would need for the upcoming week." Minato answered as he picked up his playing cards and smiled a little at seeing his favorable hand. "Don't tell me she was seriously considering buying all of the material I needed for my next invention?" Naruto asked in a flabbergasted manner. "Oh, she is," Minato said with a smile on his face. "Let me guess." Naruto spoke with a deadpan expression as he looked at his hand and picked up a card from the deck in waiting. "She wants it too." "Yep." Was all Minato said as he played his card. He then looked at his son in the eyes and said, "So tell me something." Naruto looked up at his dad and said, "Yeah, how's that bastard, Jin, treating you?" Minato said, barely able to keep the venom out of his voice. He honestly did not like the leader of the Uzumaki clan. He was always so pompous and had a holier-than-thou attitude that made Minato hate him. Yes, he hated the man. Naruto did not make a single move for a second, trying to formulate the right words in his head. His father, upon seeing his hesitation, came up to his own conclusion. "He's bordering on the line of being abusive to you, isn't he?" Minato said in a deathly whisper. His son's non-response prompted him to think of the worst things imaginable. He saw an image of his son being whipped on his back while being made to run on broken glass. "No, he isn't." Naruto answered, "There is no such thing as abusive when it comes to shinobi training, San." Minato did not like what his was implying. Has that bastard not only abused his son, but also brainwashed him into believing that a thing such as abuse did not exist? This was one of the main reasons why he hated almost everything related to being a shinobi. His eyes had a cold edge to them that Naruto rarely saw whenever he spoke with his father, as the man spoke in a very quiet tone. "What do you mean?" "Exactly that, San." Naruto answered a bit fearfully, his father's tone not sitting well with him. "Shinobi, in order to achieve perfection, put their lives on the line, even when they train. But that's wrong." Minato said almost instantly, his cold edge gone and now replaced by a warm glow of concern. "People shouldn't risk their lives that much that they're convinced that abusing their own bodies is the only way forward for them in terms of being a shinobi. And besides, there is no such thing as perfection." Naruto, upon seeing this, realized exactly why his father was not a shinobi and why the man might not really have been cut out for it even with his overly calm nature. He was just too damn soft. He may have been young, but he could tell that his father had a bit of a naive view of the world. "Tell that to those that don't know it," Naruto said, continuing with his turn. He always knew that there was no such thing as perfection. He never truly aimed for it. Only idiots did that. "Look at that, even my 8-year-old son knows that there's no such thing as perfection," Minato said animatedly. His son also happened to be a genius among geniuses, but that was beside the point. "But there is near perfection," Naruto said bluntly as he watched his father play. Minato froze for a second at what his son said. Once again, his son said something he did not like one bit. It meant that his son was willing to put his life on the line as well, like every other shinobi out there. Before he could voice his concerns, however, their front door slid open and in walked in the lady of the house. "Boys, I'm home," Kushina said as she made her way towards her two favorite people in the entire world. "Hey, Ka-chan," Naruto said as he watched his mother walk into the living room barefoot. Her shoes, Naruto guessed, were probably left outside due to the rain. The bottom part of her dress was damp from the rain. Her umbrella could not thoroughly protect her from the water that came from the heavens. Kushina walked all the way up to Naruto first, since he was the closest, and she bent down and hugged him with one arm before she kissed the top of his head. "So, how are my favorite people doing on this very, very annoyingly wet day?" Minato smiled at his wife as she came up to him and kissed him on the lips, getting Naruto to elicit an "you" before he said, "A lot better than you, that's for certain." "Ow." Minato was hit by a punch on his left shoulder as Kushina sat beside him. "What was that for?" "What do you think it was for, you sissy?" Kushina said, closing her eyes and sticking her tongue out at her husband. Minato quickly reached out and grabbed hold of her tongue with his thumb and index finger and lightly tugged it. The ha-ha-ha. Naruto was laughing out loud from the sidelines, watching the heartwarming interaction between his parents. "Minato, leth go os my thank?" Kushina asked nicely. "Nope." Minato said sweetly as well, all the while looking at his wife with a matching smile on his face. "Not until you apologize. Let it be known, universe, that I asked him politely first." Kushina mentally intoned before she quickly reached out and did something that made Minato scream like a little girl. "Behehe." Minato said as he instantly let go of his wife's tongue and tried to pry off her vice grip-like hand from his family jewels. "Apologize for what, sweetie?" Now it was Kushina's turn to speak with a sweet smile on her face. Nothing." Minato said as he tried to back away from his wife in order to lessen her grip on his nether region. He was feeling a lot of pain at the moment and he would be willing to do anything to make it end. "Now, lem ask you this." Kushina said, sickly sweet smile still plastered on her face. "Who's a sissy?" "I am." Minato's voice was almost inaudible as he squeaked out his answer. "Good." Kushina said as she let go of his family jewels, "and don't you forget it." Kushina stood up and walked up to her son, who was looking at his father cradling his private part while rolling on the floor very slowly, tears streaming down his face, with a very horrified expression etched onto his face. Upon reaching her son, Kushina grew an amused expression when she saw him cover his private part. "Don't worry, sweetie." Kushina said as she reached out and ruffled Naruto's hair, "I won't do that to you, just so long as you promise not to be an idiot like my dear husband." Naruto did not say anything, instead he chose to just shake his head in affirmation at her thinly veiled threat to him. "Oh, before I forget," he heard his mom say above him, "Here." Naruto heard a small pop, a sound he had come to know as one that only occurred in two events. Number one was during an unsealing ritual, and the other was during the usage of the Kawarimi no Jutsu. A second later, a scroll the size of his forearm had made itself known to him as it was placed between his eyes vertically, thus leading him to conclude that the sound was probably from a wrist seal being used. His hands left his crotch and they humbly accepted the scroll, all the while he did not really look up to his mom as she walked away. He was still too transfixed on the scene he had just seen. His mother was absolutely dangerous. No one was safe from her, not even the man that had impregnated her almost 9 years ago. "Thanks," he said in a dead voice before his mother came back to bonk him on the head for forgetting to say so. The first time that happened was all the necessary reminder that he needed. "No problem, sweetie." His mother's muffled voice came from the passage, most probably on her way to change out of her slightly wet clothing. "Why?" Naruto watched in shock as his father kept cradling the most sensitive portion of his body. "Why did I have to marry an Uzumaki?" "Why indeed?" Naruto wondered to himself. Warmth. That's the feeling that one would get as soon as they stepped into the home of the first family. A warmth that was so pleasing that it would make you forget that you were in a shinobi home and that you were within the confines of one of the most secure houses throughout the world. The warmth washes over you like a fountain of warm water, caressing your skin, making your mind go numb for just a second. "I see that you're back." All before the cold hard reality of this being a shinobi home brings you back to reality, courtesy of the leader of the Uzumaki clan, Jin. "Hi, Jin-sama." "Good." Then stop standing in the doorway like an idiot. You're ruining the warmth in the house. The man's awfully cold and off-putting voice droned from a few feet in front of Naruto. "Omen, Jin-sama." Naruto proceeded to close the paper screen behind him, set his shoes to the side for one of the servants to pick up and walk into the house of his illustrious clan. "How is your mother, boy?" Jin asked, with his arms crossed over his chest and peering down at his student. "She is fine, Jin-sama." Naruto replied, looking at his clan's leader in the eye. "Good." Was all the man said before he turned on his heels and quickly left the boy to his own devices. As soon as the man had disappeared from his sight, Naruto let go of sigh he had been unconsciously holding in. Jin, despite not truly striking any fear in Naruto, had a powerful and oppressive aura. It took all of Naruto's stubborn willpower that he had inherited from his mother to not cave and look at the man's feet whenever he spoke to him. He would never, ever, truly bow down to anyone. After all, to him, there was respect, then there was complete slavery and servitude. He always strove for the former, never the latter. His latent Uzumaki stubbornness would never truly allow him to do so. "Naruto. You're back." Naruto heard the soft, heartwarming voice of his friend calling to him. It withdrew him from his thoughts and placed him back in reality. Looking over to the entrance to the hallway, Naruto saw Mito standing there, wearing what was a rather simple plain white kimono, with her hair tied into their customary double buns. She had a rather large smile on her face, not really what Naruto had been expecting to see on the face of the young girl. "Hey Mito." Was all the blonde could say before his friend had covered the distance between them and swallowed him in her arms. "What the is she no longer mad at me?" Naruto thought, feeling utterly confused by what Mito was doing. Deciding on not looking a gift horse in the mouth, Naruto hugged her back, feeling the warmth that she radiated. It matched her smile, and it was all thanks to the fact that she had been indoors the entire weekend, while he had not. "So, how was the weekend at your parents' place?" Mito asked, pulling back from the slightly taller blonde-haired boy and looking at him up and down, as if trying to see if he would physically metamorphose in front of her. "My weekend was awesome. I didn't want to return, but I'm obligated to do so." "Why?" "Because your dad's and I am the sorry unlucky bastard blessed with a genius intellect that he has set his sights on," is what he wanted to say. Instead, with a small smile, he said, "My weekend was awesome. I got to spend some quality time with my parents, and while it was sad leaving them, I couldn't wait to come and see you." Mito brightened up as soon as she heard the last part of what he had said. She brought forth a megawatt smile that illustrated just how happy Naruto's answer made her feel. "Well, I'm glad you feel that way, because I missed having someone to play with," the girl said, smile still in place. "What do you mean?" Naruto said, feigning ignorance, "I thought you had Mr. Plank Plank." Mito grew red in the face at the mention of Mr. Plank Plank. She could never truly get over the fact that Naruto had caught her playing with a wooden doll, despite the fact that it was frowned upon by the shinobi world at large for a child her age to be indulging in toys. But then she was the Uzumaki princess, thus she just got to do nearly anything she wanted, so long as if her father or grandfather approved. And Mr. Plank Plank was something they both approved of. Hahaha. Hearing Naruto chuckle, she looked up just in time to see him ruffle her hair a little before he added, "I'm just messing with Yao, and tag. You're it." Without wasting another second, the blonde-haired boy had disappeared from her sight. "Hey, no fair." Mito shouted as she ran into the hallway, "You didn't warn me. And you're faster than me." A few seconds later, footsteps could be heard all over the Uzumaki household as the two youngest inhabitants of the house chased each other back and forth, not caring about the loud ruckus that they made, for they were children after all. Even the one with a high-level IQ. "Rinrei-sensei?" Naruto said, sitting down in a lotus position as he practiced different symbols on a piece of paper. "Yes, Naruto," his kinjutsu teacher said, keeping a vigilant eye on his young protege. Today, it was just Naruto and Ginrei in the study. According to Ginrei, Mito was a bit too behind Naruto in order for them to have kinjutsu lessons together, as Mito would just hold him back and he would inversely make the girl strive for things she was not ready for. So from today onwards, Mito had kinjutsu in the morning, while Naruto was being taught either kinjutsu or taijutsu. The other day Naruto made an upward stroke with a brush he held in his hand. "When I returned from my parents' house, Mito washipi to see me." Rinrei didn't move a muscle as he continued observing Naruto's hands. The boy's technique was nearly perfect, and that was when comparing him to professional sealers. "Oh, and how is that a bad thing?" "Well, the thing is, when I had left for the weekend, which you know I spent at my parents' house," Naruto curved the brush down before he received a light tap on his brush-holding hand. "Ow," he said, drawing his hand back from the stinging sensation that he felt in it, all thanks to his sensei's cane. "Focus. You curved it too much." One small, slightly off-key curve could, or rather will, mean the difference between life and death. Ginrei spoke in a reprimanding manner as Naruto rubbed his hand in order to soothe the stinging sensation. "Still too green to have perfect technique," Ginrei thought to himself. "I know that already, sensei." Naruto grumbled before he looked at the sheet next to the one that he was practicing on and saw just how he had overshot the curve. That was the problem with kinjutsu, too little or too much of a curve or an ink blot can result in you creating a dud, which is always the best case scenario in this field. "Then focus," the elderly Uzumaki statesman said, but he did not really have to because his student had already seen his error and had gone about correcting it already. "That's much better, my boy. You were mentioning something about Mito," the elder said after a minute of silence between him and his student. "Oh, yes, it's just that she had been angry with me before I left," Naruto admitted. "Oh, and what brought this on?" Ginrei asked. His granddaughter had the emotional propensity of there was nothing quite like his granddaughter. One moment she was happy and then the next she was mad about something. I think Naruto stuck his tongue out of his mouth as he drew a perfect half circle before he placed two perfectly parallel ink blot dots within the half circle. "I think it's because I said something about your grandson. Something that, well, I did not mean any offense with." She took it as such. "I see," Ginrei said as his eyes darted through the rice paper that Naruto was practicing on at the same speed his hands were moving, which was not very fast. "Let me ask you this, Naruto. Hi. Have you ever been mad at someone before?" His so-called friends in school that secretly hated him came to mind. The boy shook his head at Ginrei as he placed a very long line from the left of the page to the right. "I've only ever been disappointed in people before." "Well, I guess that's the problem here," Ginrei said, watching as Naruto got to work on the final symbol on the rice paper. "You see, you're a special child, Naruto. You did not, and maybe will never, ever, go through some of the more tedious stages of childhood. Naruto was quiet for a second as he mulled over his sensei's deduction while also looking at the seal he had to copy. "You mean mood swings like Mito's?" Naruto said after a few moments. "Not really mood swings, but rather uncontrollable emotions that are just all over the show." Ginrei corrected his charge. "I see," was all Naruto said as he went about working on the final seal. His hand moved in perfect fluidity, never leaving the paper unless if it's to dip the small brush in more ink. After a short while doing this, Naruto quickly put forth the final symbol on the paper before he placed his brush to the side and leaned back from his copied seals. Ginrei took one look at them all for his final verdict before he spoke. "Naruto, do you know what I just made you copy?" "Hi, sensei. It's the code for each of the 12 hand signs." Naruto answered. Ginrei, for the first time since the lesson began, smiled. "Yesies, yes. Naruto watched in avid fascination as his teacher stood up and jumped for joy while he kept on intoning yes, over and over again. He honestly wondered what was so special about the answer that he gave him that it could make the normally calm and quite reserved Uzumaki jump for joy. "Yes. I finally have a student that isn't a complete idiot." Ginrei's proclamation had Naruto's face faulting almost immediately after he said it. "Naruto, my boy," the man spoke in a very excitable manner, "not only do you know how to perfectly write kanji and kinjutsu symbols at such a young age, but you can read them too." "Hi." Naruto said, picking himself up from the ground as he went back into his kneeling position. "I've been able to do so for the last year now." "Really?" Ginrei asked, with a very happy expression on his face. He was beaming at the prospect of all of the things he could teach Naruto. "Hi." Naruto said calmly, knowing that at least one of them had to remain calm in this rather awkward situation. "That's amazing. So you understand what most people don't about the basics of kinjutsu?" Ginrei asked in his very excitable manner. "That every seal is just basically the 12 hand signs written down in coded format." Naruto answered with a small smile on his face. "Exactly." Ginrei exclaimed as he pulled out his own hair. "How come you can understand that, but my idiot sons could not?" "Huh, sons?" Naruto asked, catching on to what Ginrei said. "Yes, sons." The man answered. "What? Did you think I only had one prickhead of a son?" BFFFT. Naruto couldn't stop himself from laughing when Ginrei said that, completely catching him off guard with how he called Jin a prick. "There's another idiot roaming around the world carrying my genes." Ginrei informed the blonde, "His name's Ashina." Hahaha. Naruto wasn't laughing at Ashina, whoever that was. He was instead laughing at Jin being called a prickhead, something he couldn't get off his mind since he wholeheartedly agreed. The thing that made all of this that much funnier to the blonde was the fact that it was Jin's father that had said it. Ginrei just smiled seeing the boy finally break off into a full fit of laughter. He joined in too a second later. Ginrei, in Naruto's opinion, was finally showing that he was a true Uzumaki. Despite being so highly respected, he did not really give a damn about status. If he was willing to jump for joy and make himself a fool in front of his student, then the man was awesome in Naruto's books. After the duo had calmed down from their collective fits of laughter, Ginrei looked at Naruto and said, "Naruto, I want you to do something for me." "What is it, sensei?" the boy said, schooling his features back into his neutral facial expression. "Smile more often," the wizened man said. He then proceeded towards the door that led out of his study and opened it. After doing so, he turned to his still kneeling protege and said, "Tomorrow, after your training with my son, I want you to meet me by the front gates." Naruto's face gained a questioning appearance to it, not even having the slightest idea as to why his teacher wanted them to meet outside. It wasn't like they could practice kinjutsu outdoors, especially since it's so windy. "Huh? Why?" "Because we're going somewhere, you idiot," the man said before he shut the door behind him, leaving the boy in his study. "Oh okay." Naruto trudged towards his room feeling slightly refreshed after a day of training for the first time since his training stint had begun here last week. Upon walking up to his door, he noticed a shadow that looked like a giant silhouette of the only person younger than him that was within the confines of the house dancing on the paper door. Sliding the paper door open, he was greeted by an empty room, not seeing a single follicle of Mito's red hair anywhere before he walked into the room. Quicker than most would expect an 8-year-old to move, Naruto's arm shot up, catching broomstick that nearly hit him on the head before he pulled on it really hard. "Whoa." He heard Mito's voice say as she was pulled from the ceiling she had been clinging onto with the soles of her feet. He quickly caught her, making sure that he held on really tight, while also making sure that he didn't fall to the ground. "How?" Mito asked in an annoyed voice. "Every time I do this, you find a way of seeing me." Naruto just smiled at her as he patted all of the wrinkles off her kimono. "Well, just as I have told you before, I can sense you. Remember?" Mito huffed and said, "I don't believe you." Naruto just smirked at her and said, "How else are you going to explain me being able to catch you every single time?" "I don't know." Mito threw her hands into the air in exasperation, "but it definitely cannot be because you can sense me." Maybe you're right. Naruto said with a sly smile on his face, maybe it's not that I can sense you, but rather that you're so bad at stealth that I don't need to. Swoosh. Naruto was gone quicker than Mito could throw a punch. By the time the girl had realized that he had evaded her, he was already plopping himself down onto his futon. You know, 2cent designed this really cool thing called a bed. It's way more comfortable than a futon. You guys should get one. Naruto said as he crossed his hands behind his head while lying down on his back. Bed? Mito said in confusion, previous verbal turned slightly physical spar already forgotten, what the heck is that? Naruto answered the girl as she plopped herself next to him, okay, you know how my dad is a carpenter, right? Yes. Yeah, well, he came up with this really nice piece of furniture that's meant for sleeping purposes. It's called a bed. That's a terrible name. Mito said. I know, I was waiting for you to say that before I continued. Everyone, Kachan and I included, think it's a bad name, but 2chan doesn't really care. His invention, so he's naming it as far as he's concerned. Naruto said. Okay, Mito drawled out a bit, but you still haven't told me about what makes it so special that it could beat out a futon. Oh, it's simple. Naruto said, quickly jumping to his feet, startling Mito a little with the action, before he placed his hand at his waist and said, image a futon this size. And then it all dawned onto Mito exactly how much better a bed was. She may have been 7, but even she understood what Naruto was implying. Oh Kami-sama, Mito exclaimed. Exactly. Naruto said, plopping himself down onto the futon once more. So how much does your father sell this bird? It's bed. Yes, bed thing of his. I'm not really sure. I just know that he made it for every room in the house and he's trying to find a way to mass produce it so that everyone can have one. Naruto answered honestly. That all sounds complicated. Mito said. Not really, guess I understand where he is coming from. Naruto said. What do you mean? Well, it's just that I'm an inventor as well, so I kind of understand what he's going through. Naruto said. You invented something? Mito had eyes as wide as saucers at this point. Yeah, but do not tell this to anyone. Okay. Naruto quickly warned his friend and she nodded in response to his warning. Show me. The girl said excitedly. Naruto saw the look she had on her face. It was one of wonder and awe. She was desperate to see his invention, and while he may not be very skilled in the art of forgery and inventions, he had his own unique knack for it. And he wanted to show off a bit. Alright. Yes. Mito fist pumped the air in victory. But remember, you can't tell anyone. Naruto warned once more. This time though, Mito made the motion of a zip closing over her mouth before she opened it and swallowed the key. How are you able to swallow the key if you just zipped your mouth? What? Never mind. Naruto got onto his feet once again and this time he brandished something. Something that he had been tinkering with since he first gained full mastery of it in its original form. A yo-yo? Mito asked him as she saw that he held one in his hand. In all honesty, she was let down. She expected something she had never seen before, not a worn-out yo-yo. SHHHH. Was all the warning Naruto gave before he lightly tapped his thumb on the yo-yo's surface before he threw it at the wooden door of the walk-in closet and it embedded itself onto it. Mito's eyes went wide when she saw just how it had embedded itself onto the door of the closet. The yo-yo's once smooth surface now had metallic spikes jutting out in every direction. How? Was all Mito could say as she stared at the yo-yo in awe. It has a few problems. Naruto said, not really answering Mito. For one, in battle someone could cut the string I use and make it useless. Naruto lightly pulled on the extended string of the yo-yo as if to emphasize his point. The blades don't know when to retract. At this, he pulled out the yo-yo in earnest, getting it to clunk dully on the wooden floorboards before he walked over to it, picked it up, and inspected it for a second. This means that simply pulling it back towards me in the heat of battle for when I want to use it again would make it next to impossible because it means that it could end up cutting me. Which kind of makes it useless. Mito surmised, getting Naruto to nod at her. Yeah, pretty much. Naruto said. You know what, your yo-yo has lost all of its cool points. Mito said cheekily. Cool points? Naruto said questioningly, how are you and I friends again? Swoosh. Once more Mito had missed her blonde target as he had evaded her and had proceeded to sit down on his futon and work on his yo-yo once again. I'm going to sleep. You suck. Mito said, sticking her tongue out at him. So says Miss I suck at stealth. Naruto answered without looking up as he worked the string of his yo-yo. Whatever, Mr. Ra. Come on. Mito said in frustration, one day I will develop a good comeback for you. And I'll be waiting. Naruto spoke without looking up once more. There were a few moments of near-perfect silence, with the only thing that could be heard being Mito's feet shuffling, before Naruto heard the unmistakable sound of the paper door being slid open and Mito's feet shuffling some more. Good night. She said to him. He looked up and smiled at her before he waved out his own good night. Then she shut the paper door. To be continued. Chapter 4. Uzumaki. Hurry up, will ya? Ginrei's irritated voice permeated through the thick trees of the forest. Just as Sek Ginrei-sama. Naruto replied. He came bursting out of the tree line, hopping from one tree branch to the next. What took you so long? The old man said, with a slightly raised eyebrow. Naruto did not know what to say at first. A small part of him wanted to lie and blame his tardiness on something else, but he quickly settled for the truth. Mito. Ah. Was all the old man said as his face shone in realization. He quickly turned around after that, his clothes billowing slightly from the sudden motion, before he said, well then, follow me. Naruto smiled a little as he followed the man he had taken a huge liking to over the past week. He was honestly giddy with anticipation as he quickly caught up with Ginrei, and they walked at a relatively calm pace. Nothing was said between the little boy and the old man as they walked next to each other in the forest surrounding the home that they lived in. The path that they took soon turned downhill. On either side of this downhill slope the trees thinned out and in their place were houses. The houses that they encountered first were almost as regal looking as the house that belonged to the main family. The further they traversed down the hill, the less extravagant the houses became, until they just became bland copycats of each other. The houses higher up the hill were for the more important members of the Uzumaki clan, while the ones that were lower were for the run-of-the-mill Uzumaki shinobi. Naruto saw his parents' house amongst the lower section of the hill. Despite his mother being one of the strongest Uzumaki on the island, at least that's what she always said, she was not of any royal patronage, and as such, she was housed alongside all of the less important shinobi. Naruto found it funny that all of the old members of the clan lived higher up the hill. Didn't walking up the hill cause any back problems? Looking at the man he walked next to, he got his answer. The duo soon reached a pair of giant wooden doors that were open. This was known as the Great Gateway. It acted as a separator between the Uzumaki clan and what was on the other side of the gates. The Whirling City. The Whirling City acted as the main business hub of the island. People that came from far and wide in order to do business on Yuzu no Kuni always wound up in the city. It ensured that no one that wasn't in Uzumaki stepped foot onto their clan's grounds. Naruto and Ginrei calmly walked through the small CBD of Yuzu no Kuni, taking in the many house-sized stores that made up the CBD. There were stores that specialized in things such as clothing, food and shinobi supplies. Naruto had been here so many times that he could map out the entire business district with ease. It had been engraved in his mind, which was good because he would one day be stationed as one of its protectors. As the duo continued their brisk walk, they were greeted by many of the civilian store owners and the shinobi that were on duty, serving as watchdogs. The Uzumaki had a unique relationship with people. Due to being known as the hippie clan, a lot of civilians wanted to do business with the Uzumaki because they trusted them. They were known to be a just and fair clan, always looking out for one another, never ever backstabbing anyone. There was a running joke within the shinobi world that the Uzumaki did not even have a single bad bone in them. Of course this would be preposterous in Naruto's own opinion. If that really were the case then the Uzumaki would be dead already. They were shinobi, just like everyone else. Due to their strategic positioning as the only clan on Yuzu no Kuni, they were better at hiding their skeletons than other clans on the mainland were. According to his mother, the Uzumaki are the only clan in the world to have an entire city directly under their care. In the mainland, especially in Hai no Kuni, the clans that reside there aren't allowed anywhere near their country's capital, unless if they were invited by the daimyo. The entire place was guarded by a samurai force that, while individually they were weaker than their shinobi counterparts, they more than made up for it with their sheer numbers. All of Hai no Kuni's clans would need to come together and work as one if they ever wanted to take control of the capital. Unfortunately for them, there was just too much bad blood between them all for such a thing to happen. Naruto. Naruto's head snapped towards Ginrei, who had a slightly irritated look on his face as he looked at him. Hi. Finally. Ginrei exasperated, what the heck were you thinking about that could take so much of your time? Nothing much. Naruto said honestly, before he noticed that they were standing in front of a two-story building that had a gigantic swirl on it. The swirl had a scroll running diagonally across it. Wait, what are we doing at the library? Naruto asked as he turned to look at his traveling companion. We're here to see a friend of mine. Ginrei said with a small smile on her face. Great. Naruto thought, probably an old man. And how right he was. After they had entered the building, they went straight to a man that sat at the front desk of the library. The man wore a red kimono top, dark pants and wooden jeta. Shimanosuke, old friend. Ginrei said with warmth in his voice. Ginrei, you old goat. Shimanosuke said as he got up from his seat and he walked around it in order to stand in front of it. How are you, my friend? Ginrei asked the man as they hugged briefly. Naruto just stood back, not really finding it appropriate to come between these old friends. Don't act like you care about my well-being. Shimanosuke said this with a smile on his face. Ginrei feigned being struck by something in his heart as he clutched onto his yukata's chest region. Ow, that hurts. Good. Shimonosuke said as he folded his arms and said, "It shouldn't take you 2 whole years before you check up on me, you old goat." Inrei pouted and mumbled, "You could have gone up to see me, you know. And risk hurting my back." Shimonosuke said, getting Naruto to pat himself on the back for his earlier deduction on the Uzumaki elders having difficulty traversing up the clan's grounds. "No thanks." "So who's the Gaki?" Inrei, quicker than Naruto would expect one to drop a pout, said, "He's blonde and he's in Uzumaki." Shimonosuke had a long pensive look on his face as he racked his brain for the answer, before his face lit up after a few seconds, and he said, "Wait, this is Kushina's Gaki." "Yep." Ginrei said. "So you're the famous blonde Gaki that has everyone's tongues wagging." Shimonosuke said as he closed in on Naruto, before he placed his wrinkled hand on Naruto's blonde hair. "Hi." Was all Naruto could say as Shimonosuke ruffled his hair. "A kid, good kid." Shimonosuke said, "So what's your name?" "Naruto." "Ah, Naruto. Good name. So was it your idea to come and see me, eh Naruto?" No. I don't even know you sir." Naruto's answer resulted in something Naruto thought he would never see, an old man sulk. Inrei chose this as the appropriate moment to laugh at his old friend, find the entire interaction between his student and his old friend to be quite hilarious. "Well, that was quite funny." The former clan leader said, "Well, it was my idea actually. What do you want?" Shimonosuke said spitefully. "No need to be so cold, old friend." Ginrei said as he stroked his beard, "I came here to ask for your help with something." "Isn't that always the case with you, always asking for help?" Shimonosuke said, before he turned and faced Naruto and said, even as kids he couldn't even wipe his own behind without asking for help. PFFT. Naruto broke into a fit of giggles at that. "Hey, that's not true." Ginrei said in outrage, before his face took on the shade of a tomato as he said, "It was just those annoying servants my father had around that wanted to do it." Ha 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 ha. Naruto, at this point, was holding his stomach and laughing his ass off. Inrei shifted his focus from the floor to Naruto in a split second. "You shouldn't laugh so much otherwise you'll find yourself mysteriously doing training at 3 a.m. Naruto sobered up really quickly. "Anyway, old friend," Ginrei said as he turned his attention to Shimonosuke, "I have a request." "What is it?" Shimonosuke said in a grumpy manner. "Ninjutsu 101." Ginrei replied with a serious expression. "For the boy." Shimonosuke said, pointing to Naruto with his head. "Yep. When should I pop by?" "Whenever you're free." "Alright, but why don't you do it?" "Shimo, we both know that my techniques are a bit too advanced for a 101 class." "You're just lazy, aren't you?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." The two old men just stared each other down for a few seconds before a smile broke out over Shimonosuke's face. "I'll be there this afternoon for our first lesson." "Alright." Ginrei said, before he turned to Naruto, who had been silently observing their conversation from the sidelines for a bit. We're leaving now." Naruto just nimbly nodded his head before he exited the building behind Ginrei, all the while thinking about old men that behaved like children. XXXXX. Uzumaki main family household. Whenever one thought about what it might be like to be the heiress of a clan, they would surely think along the lines of being spoiled rotten, while also being spoon-fed everything that there was to know about the shinobi world. While that would be true for some, it did not apply to Uzumaki Mido. She was a special case. Again. Jin's voice broke through the silence that was within the darkened room. Mido shut her eyes and did as she had been taught ever since she was 5 years old. She calmed her breathing to a point where it seemed as if she was not breathing at all, before she slowly started to extend her sixth sense. Whenever one thought about what made sensory shinobi special, they just assumed that it was a combination of chakra and good luck that allowed them to pick out things that the normal 5 senses could not. The Uzumaki clan had a different ideology altogether when it came to how sensory skills were to be perceived. They did not view them as some special ability that involved the manipulation of chakra through specialized means, rather it was an extension of a person. It was the natural instinct that you had as a person that told you whether you were in a fight or flight situation. This ideology had been passed down to young Mido, who was currently situated in a room filled to the brim with special skin that made it nearly impossible for one to sense where a person might be within the confines of the room. "You're 26 feet to my left, Tusama," Mido said. If one could see through the darkness, they would have been able to see something that resembled a smile on Jin's face. "Not good enough. I'm actually 24 feet to your left," the usually stoic man said to his daughter. "So?" Mido said, with a pout on her face, "I'm off by 2 feet." "Exactly." Well, Jin found it beyond admirable that his daughter was as good as she was for her age at sensing targets, especially within the black room. He still wanted to push Mido beyond this level. A miscalculation by even a single foot is all it takes to ruin mission and result in your death. Mido's pout dropped from her face, and it took a more neutral look. "I understand, Tusama." "Good." Jin said, "We're done for today." As soon as he said that, the seals within the darkened room glowed green and the natural lighting of the room returned. Mito was dressed in a form-hugging, long-sleeved, white shirt and a pair of matching pants. Her father was dressed in the standard kimono he wore every day whenever he was not on any mission. The man that lead the Uzumaki clan looked at his slightly sweating daughter with a smile on his face and said, "You are progressing well, Mito." "Thank you, Tusama." As much as Mito enjoyed the compliment, she sensed a but coming along. But, she internally congratulated herself for being on the money. "You aren't at the level that I expect you to be." "Thanks." Mito was never really sure about how to take her father's words. He could make a complaint seem like a compliment, and vice versa. It astounded her how someone could do such a thing. Mito turned on her heels and started heading for the exit. Her training was done for today. Now she could go and play with Naruto. Mito. Jin, as pleased as he was at his daughter's progress, had something that he wanted to ask his daughter, and from the look on his face, he was not really sure about how to go about it. It was a mixture between a constipated samurai and a sick patient lying on his deathbed. "What do you think of Naruto?" Jin decided to just rip the plaster off in one go. "Naruto?" Mito asked her father, with all of her confusion written on her face. Mito may have been 7 years old, but even she could tell that her father did not particularly like Naruto, and she had thought of doing something about it during the weekend he was away. She had asked her grandfather about it, telling him that she did not really like the tension between her newfound friend and her father, but the Uzumaki elder quickly shot her down, saying that this was an issue she should stay out of. "Yes, Naruto. The short boy you seem to play with every day." Jin said, "Or do you have memory loss?" Was that a joke? Mito wondered as she stared at her father. He was never really a man of comedy, or anything remotely fun for that matter. He was always serious. "I know who you're talking about, Tusama, it's just surprising." "What is? You asking me about him? He's your friend or am I mistaken?" Nope. He is my friend." "Okay. Now, answer my question." "Well," Mito began, unsure of how to progress, "he's really smart." "I know that." Indeed, Naruto was very smart, especially for someone his age. "Then what do you want me to say?" Mito was becoming frustrated really fast. Her father seemed to be asking something beyond the level of someone that you've only known for a week. "Watch your tone," he said sternly, making Mito lower her head. Her father was an adult, and as she had been taught by her grandfather and her mother before she passed away, she ought to respect all adults. "I'm sorry," Mito said quietly. Jin looked at Mito's saddened form with a calculated gaze. It would seem he wouldn't be getting what he wanted from her at the moment. "You're free to go." No sooner had the words left his mouth, Mito was already out of the room. Jin, now all alone within the confines of the black room, let out a small sigh. He did not like how his daughter had left his presence. It was disrespectful, sure, but that wasn't what he did not like about it. He didn't like how she left the room with a body language of someone that was afraid of him. That is not how a daughter should be with her father. A daughter should love her father unconditionally to the point where fear would be the last thing on her mind. He had already lost one child, and Mito was his last born. His last hope. His last shred of humanity. XXXXX. Uzumaki clan grounds, 3 days later. Nature was silent. Ginrei was silent. Shimonosuke was silent. Naruto was silent, not really. Moving at his top speed, Naruto's hands blurred into a myriad of hand seals before he rested on the ram hand seal. Shunshin no jutsu. Naruto's pace quickened exponentially. To a normal civilian it would seem as if he were simply appearing and disappearing from existence with short bursts in between, but to the two men that were watching the young boy train, they could see him just fine. To them, he may as well have been walking at a normal brisk pace. Naruto shimmered into existence next to the old men, hyperventilating as the sweat on his brow was visible for them to see. "Aha, well done my boy," Shimonosuke said, "to get this jutsu down in 3 days is no easy feat." "Indeed." Ginrei concurred. "Yes. Why, I remember it took all ginger breath over here nearly 2 years to get it down," Shimonosuke said, laughing at the look of betrayal on Ginrei's face. "Boy." Ginrei said, "Watch what you say in front of my student, you old prune. Do you want him to lose all sense of respect for me?" "Ha ha ha, what respect?" Shimonosuke said, moving away from Ginrei as he pointed a finger at Naruto. Ginrei's head quickly whipped into the general direction of his student and he found him trying very hard to stifle a laugh. "You better not," Ginrei warned the blonde Uzumaki, finger raised and pointing at the boy. The FFT. Naruto's cheeks were red at this point, trying to hold in his laughter. "Good boy," Ginrei said as if he had been talking to a dog. He then turned to face Shimonosuke with a smug smile on his face. "See, I still got it. For now," was all the administrator said. Naruto corrected himself after a small bit of laughter escaped. "Ginrei-sama. What is it?" I was wondering if you could help me out with an issue of mine." "Oh, don't worry about that," Shimonosuke said, "he'll help you, but only when your training is complete for the day." "You mean we're not done?" Naruto asked. "Of course not. It's only Shimonosuke looked up at the sky, 2 o'clock on the dot. Naruto looked up into the sky and silently tried to look at whatever it was that allowed Shimonosuke to be able to tell time just by looking at the sky. Hey, I'm down here, short stuff. Naruto looked at the old man with a mixture of disdain and disappointment. Disdain at being called out on his height and disappointment and not being able to see what Shimonosuke used to tell the time. Okay, the old ninjutsu teacher said while rubbing his hands together, now we're getting to something fun. Elemental ninjutsu. Wait. Ginrei immediately intervened, isn't it a bit too early to introduce him to that concept? Don't worry, I'm not gonna teach him nature transformation. Then what are you doing teaching him elemental ninjutsu at age 8? Ginrei all but shouted. My old man had a stupid but very effective philosophy: start them young and they grow into it. Shimonosuke with pride in his voice. Uzumaki Katetsu was a loon. True as that may be, but he was the best at it. Shimonosuke said, not taking the slightest bit of offense at Ginrei's words, before he quickly added, and I don't mean being a loon. I mean teaching. Oh really? Yes. How so? Look, if you're gonna argue with me about whether or not my father made a good teacher or not, then we might as well argue about which vegetable is better between a potato and an onion. Whatever retort Ginrei had quickly died in his throat. I hate you. Ginrei said, turning sideways like a child and ignoring the smug look Shimonosuke sported. I know you do. There was a small bout of silence in the clearing that they were training in, potato. And then it was gone. Onion. Shimonosuke said. Potato. Onion. Otatu. Ginrei said while grinding his teeth and slamming his forehead into Shimonosuke's. How? Everyone knows that an onion is the key component to any good meal. Yes, but you can't eat it alone, now can you? And then what? Die of starch. No thanks. How about I kill you for disrespecting the potato? How when I would have done that to you first? Ahem. Naruto's voice broke through the bickering old men. How about we get back to what's really important? Potatoes? Ginrei answered. No. Training. That seemed to sober up the 2 Uzumaki elders as their argument became a thing of the past. To Naruto, who had been watching the entire exchange without so much as a single interjection on his part until the very end, he couldn't believe that he was looking at 2 highly respected members of the Uzumaki clan. They behaved like a bunch of spoiled brats. Respect was definitely going down, fast. Anyway, Naruto, that brought him back to reality, time to get cracking. A simple nod was sent Shimonosuke's way. Place your hand out. Shimonosuke said, and Naruto complied, palm first. What are you doing? The young boy asked his elder. Shimonosuke had taken Naruto's hand and he had placed it on top of his left palm, while he had taken his right index finger and placed it on Naruto's palm. What I'm doing is something my father invented for detecting chakra nature. The elder Uzumaki explained, I'm going to begin by channeling my chakra into yours, and then you're going to just channel chakra into your hand. Can you do that? A nod followed the old man's question. Good. Was all he said before he sent a small stream of chakra into Naruto's palm. Naruto replied by doing as he had been instructed by Shimonosuke, and he channeled his chakra into the man's index finger. As soon as there was contact between both of their chakra natures, Naruto felt a weird sensation coursing through his hand. Well, it was not an unpleasant one, it was a sensation that was not really welcomed by his body. He tried to quantify it by comparing it with something else, but he honestly could not. It was just so strange. The duo had stayed silent for a few moments, with only the small gust of wind blowing through the clearing and the quiet hum of their chakra making any sort of sound. Shimonosuke eventually spoke after a minute had passed. Water. You sound disappointed, sensei. Naruto said. Not disappointed, just tired. Shimonosuke said. I guess you would be if you lived on an island nation filled with water users. I'm sure you'd like some variety. Naruto said, clearly catching what his ninjutsu sensei was alluding to. You're a smart one, eh? Shimonosuke said as he let off of Naruto's hand, stopping the exercise. I thought we had already established that, Shimo. Ginrei decided to join in on their conversation. True, but even I am surprised by just how smart he is. He speaks with the mental clarity of a very experienced individual. Shimonosuke spoke while walking away from Naruto. Careful, Shimo, we don't want to inflate his ego. What ego? He's too small to have one. Shimonosuke laughed a bit. Age does not mean anything. I ought to know, I raised a very egotistical son. Your son was not egotistical. He was just spoilt rotten by a very bad parent. Ginrei's facial features took on a slightly dark turn. Are you calling me a bad parent? No. Shimonosuke said calmly, not the least affected by his friend's dark aura. Good. We both know I am a very good parent. Yes, but your wife was not. Oh, shit. Naruto thought. He may have been young, but even he knew that Uzumaki Kasumi was someone that Ginrei loved more than even his own children. He knew that you never ever insulted the woman's memory, even if you were not in front of Ginrei. You were basically asking to die. Yet here was Shimonosuke, not giving a rat's ass, and doing so anyway. Maybe he had gone senile with old age. During the few seconds it had taken Naruto to remember everything related to the former clan head's wife, an eerie silence had descended upon the clearing. It was a silence that spoke of many things that could happen as soon as it ended. Be it good or bad. In this case anyone that was there could surmise that something bad was about to happen. Ah ha 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 ha. And then they would be proven wrong by the sound of laughter that erupted from the two Uzumaki elders. Ah ha ha ha, that is a good one, Shimo. Ginrei spoke in between fits of laughter while clutching his sides. I'm so ha 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 sorry, but Kasumi was tt terrible with kids. Shimonosuke was also finding it very hard to speak in between his fits of laughter. She was so bad, oh, ha ha ha, so bad that she dropped Jin when he was just a month old. Maybe that's why ha 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 he is such an egghead. Ah ha 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 ha. The old men laughed so hard after that they ended up on the floor, just laughing their butts off. Naruto, who had been looking at the old men from the sidelines, decided to just let them be. Uzumaki geezers were just too weird for him. They behaved more like kids than actual adults. I guess I'll just leave you two to it then. Naruto said, referencing to their bout of laughter that they did not seem to be calming down from soon. He slowly made his way out of the clearing, disappearing into the trees that surround the massive clearing, on his way home. The laughter immediately died down as soon as Naruto was out of their sight. The old men looked at each other with very serious expressions that were not something that one would have associated with either of them a few moments ago. So, Ginrei began as he got up from the ground and dusted himself off. What did you want to talk about? Shimonosuke mimicked his friend, standing up and dusting himself off as well. One of the perks of having a best friend of more than 5 years was that you tended to develop your own secret system of codes. With the two of them, however, it was a full-blown language with how long they have known each other. The boy's chakra. The aged administrator said, thinking about how he had secretly sent a small signal to Ginrei while scanning Naruto's chakra for his chakra nature. Ginrei nodded at his friend to continue. There's a strangeness to it. Shimonosuke said, trying to find the proper words to say what he wanted. The technique his father created was something that was meant to decipher a person's chakra nature. One of its requirements was that you needed to have a certain level of mastery in the 5 basic chakra natures, and Shimonosuke had that. My friend, stop beating around the bush. Ginrei said. He's, to be continued. Chapter 5. Arrival. The glorious natural radiance of the sun graced the people of Yuzu no Kuni with much fervor. It acted as an apparatus that told people that it was time to wake up. It was time to meet whatever life threw at you head on. It was time to try and get your life in order. Why do we have to get up so early? A very annoyed Mito voiced out. Well, at least it did so for those that weren't already up. Because it's the early bird that catches the worm, Mito-chan. Minato answered. Yeah, but we're not birds. Mito's annoyance continued to make itself heard. Ah ha ha ha. Yes, well it's still a good policy to apply to everyday life. Minato said as he led the way down a dirt street. Behind him were Mito and Naruto, and they were wearing what would be considered their civvies. Mito was dressed in a kimono that went past her knees but never quite reached her ankles, while Naruto wore a pair of dark pants and a kimono top. They were inside to the whirling city, headed towards a destination that, whenever he thought about, put a smile on Minato's face. So, where exactly are we going? Mito asked after a moment of silence. Naruto looked at his best friend with a small smile on his face. Ever since Mito had come home with him, she has been subjected to a totally different lifestyle, a near-perfect juxtaposition on the opposite side of the social scales. While Mito was not an entitled and insufferable little girl, she was however, a really spoiled one. Her father may have acted like a drill sergeant when it came to Naruto, but he was never truly as hard with Mito. She had the pleasure of waking up after sunrise. For Naruto, it was a luxury that rarely let itself be known in his life. His mom, being the professional that she was, only when she felt like it, and his dad, being the workaholic that he was, always woke him up extremely early. Living with Mito's father and grandfather hadn't done anything to change that at all. Oh, you'll see. Minato's smile grew just an extra inch. They walked past 3 more house-sized buildings before they eventually came across what looked like a slightly abandoned building. It had all of the telltale signs of being abandoned, which included dust that hung on the windows that was so thick that it obscured their view of whatever was inside. "Dusan," Naruto exclaimed, with surprise evident in his tone, "is this what I think it is?" "Is this what?" Mito asked, looking between the 2 blonde males that were looking at the old building. "It sure is, son." Minato's pride could be heard in his voice when he said that. "This is my shop." Naruto and Mito's awe was voiced in one word, whoa. "I know it's not too pleasing on the eye," Minato began, stuffing his right hand into his pocket and producing a piece of paper with something Naruto immediately recognized as a seal on it, "but with the right amount of hard work, I'm sure we can turn this place around." Minato placed a piece of paper on the door and he stepped back. A small blue hue was exuded by the seal on the paper before it died down and the ink moved on the paper. Naruto may have been someone that had only studied the famed Uzumaki art of kinjutsu for few months, but the inscription on the paper was as plain as day to him. It changed from close to open. Then his mind immediately backtracked to something his father said. "Wait, did you say we?" Naruto looked up and saw his father place one hand on the door before he turned to look at him with a soft smile on his face. "You heard right, son. We." But that said, Minato proceeded to push the door open, allowing the world to get a full view of what would soon be his base of operations. Dust immediately assaulted the trio, making them cough and sneeze as they tried to swat the dust away from their faces by using their hands while making their way into the shop. Naruto looked at the shop, finding it to be pretty bare, but with a lot of space. He could definitely see why his father bought, or was it rent out, the building despite its dilapidated state. With the right amount of people, it could become a proper shop, one where he could operate out of nicely. Knowing his father, he'd probably include a room for his inventions that weren't ready to be shown to the general public. Minato coughed a bit before he said, "So what do you guys think?" Mito looked at the dusty form of Minato with watery eyes and said, "It's dusty, that's for sure." "Ah ha 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 ha. I couldn't agree with you more, Mito-chan." Minato then turned to look at his son. "Sachi, you know what to do." Naruto quickly drew back his right sleeve, revealing a wristband with kin on it. With a quick application of chakra, the wristband was covered in a harmless white smoke before it disappeared and was soon replaced by a normal-sized scroll. He put the scroll on the floor and quickly did what is did with the seal on his wristband. This time though, instead of a scroll, he got cleaning utensils. "Ah, so this is what mom put in the scroll," Naruto exclaimed. He had been given the scroll by his mother to put into the special wristband seal that Ginrei had given to him. She didn't say anything beyond, "Open that scroll when your father tells you to, okay?" Naruto figured at that moment that she probably knew that he and Mito were going to spend the entire day cleaning, judging by the amount of dust and dirt within the building. In front of Naruto were 3 brooms, 3 mops and 3 buckets. One set for each of them it would seem. Along with it there was what appeared to be some sort of dried cow dung stuffed into a tin. One for each person. Not a lot of people outside the domestic worker field knew exactly what was used to shine floors, but Naruto did. Dried cow dung, with added chemical agents, was especially good on cement floors, like the one underneath all of the dust and dirt that they stood on. "Alright guys," Minato's voice brought him back to the real world, "take a broom and let's start sweeping." And so Mito and, to a lesser extent, Naruto were subjected to the tiring parts of being a child, doing something you did not want to do, out of respect for your elders. Uzumaki clan main household. Sitting within the confines of the small library that existed within the main Uzumaki household, Ginrei was at a loss about a certain subject matter. Several subject matters plagued his mind, but the most pressing one of them all involved the Senju and the nature of their visit. The 3-month deadline ended tomorrow, and knowing the kind of man Senju Bitsuma is, he wouldn't be a second late. He was a very punctual individual. Many saw him as the epitome of what a shinobi, especially a clan head, should aspire to be. His own son, Jin, took after the man in some regard, mainly his strict nature, but beyond that he was his own man. For all of the good parts of being a shinobi that the Senju clan had inspired, he also inspired the bad. He was a very shrewd man, often doing the most underhanded of things in order to make sure that whatever objectives he had were fulfilled. If one were looking for something that epitomized the model shinobi that every clan wished to create, they just had to point to Senju Bitsuma. "Ryo, for your thoughts." Jin's voice cut through the silence that had reigned over the small library that made up Ginrei's study. Looking up at his son, who currently stood in front of the doorway of the library, Ginrei nodded his head. Jin took a few steps into his father's study before speaking about whatever it was that he thought was plaguing his father's mind, the Senju, or to be more specific, Bitsuma. Another nod was all Jin received. The man proceeded to sit down in front of his father, cross-legged. "The man is dangerous." Jin spoke with a hint of worry in his tone. "That he is, my child," Ginrei replied. While the father and son duo did not really see eye to eye on most issues, there were times when they did. This was one such time. Senju Bitsuma put everyone in the shinobi world on edge. No one truly trusted him. Not even his distant cousins. "So what about his visit has you so worried?" "Knowing you, you already have a few theories in mind." Jin spoke with assurance. He knew his father well. Not as well as he would have wanted to, but he knew him well enough to know that his nickname of Ginrei the Wise wasn't something he just picked up like picking a stone. He earned it. "I believe he may be coming here to drum up some sort of deal with us, one which could see us being drawn into a war with the Uchiha and whoever the hell else they are fighting on the mainland." "What about the Bijk? Don't you think he'll want to talk about that as well?" Jin questioned, placing a hand on the wisp of a beard that he had growing on his chin. "I need to shave," again were words that rang through his head. "Yes, well there is a possibility that something like that could happen." We all know that he's biting at the opportunity to eradicate all who stand in his way. With a Bij backing him, there wouldn't be any that could stop him. Except us. Jin threw what he and his father knew to be the truth into the conversation. When all was said and done, the only people in the world that would have any shot of taking on a Bij-backed Senju Bitsuma would be the Uzumaki. Even then, victory was not really guaranteed. It also wouldn't be easy due to them being family somewhat. Over the last 10 years though, even the word family has started to blur a little thanks to the tyrannical Senju leader. Indeed. If a Bij was indeed what Senju Bitsuma was hoping to get, then the world was in for it. Uzumaki included. Minato's store afternoon. Cleaning up the future store of Namikaze Minato had been surprisingly easier than expected. By 12, they had already finished sweeping and mopping the place. 3 hours, and lots of perfume-scented dung floor polish later, they were now relaxing outside the building, with an ice-cold beverage in each of their hands. Well, that was a fun, right guys? Minato spoke with a slight chuckle. A man walked by and waved his hand at the trio, and they proceeded to reciprocate it. They had been getting them from the various denizens of the civilian side of the island all day long. If you like spending your entire day cleaning, then yes. It was absolutely fun. Mito spoke with a hint of annoyance in her tone. Minato was proud of the clan heir. She took to the task of helping with the cleaning without so much as a complaint out of her. He was afraid that maybe she would come out spoilt rotten like most of the supposed royalty that existed in this world. Guess there's an exception to every rule. So, we have to leave early tomorrow, Tusan. Naruto said, ending the small bout of silence that had ensued. Oh, because of the Senju thing. He may not be a shinobi, but he lived with one at home, so things like the leader of the most powerful clan in the world coming to see your home were bound to float into conversations. Yes. Naruto concurred, Ginrei-sensei wants us back in the morning so that we can prepare for Senju-sama and his children. Ah, I heard about that too. Minato said, is it just going to be them only? We're not really sure. Mito answered, from what Tusama said, we should expect more. I see. Minato's face took on a thoughtful expression as he mulled an idea over in his head. His face soon took on a look of someone that just struck gold. Wait a sec, this could be the opportunity I have been looking for. What do you mean, Tusan? Naruto asked, seeing the look on his father's face. It was a look he knew all too well. It was the same look he had whenever he had a brilliant idea. Turning quicker than expected, Minato grabbed both children's hands and held them together, while also donning a pleading look on his face. Before he spoke, can you two get the Senju entourage and Jin and Ginrei-sama to pop by the store tomorrow? Oui? Was all Naruto could ask of his father. Because if you do that, then I can have some special people act as my pseudo-ambassadors for my business. Minato said, pleading look turning into a crazed look in a few seconds. He was beginning to jump on his feet the more he thought about his idea. What exactly are you going to be selling, Minato-oji? Mito asked with a hint of nerves in her voice. Naruto was the one that answered her instead of Minato. Remember that invention that I told you about a few months ago? You mean what was it? Oh, the bad. Right. Mito exclaimed. Ed. Both blondes corrected her at the time. Oh. Mito blushed a little at them admonishing her. Yes, well can you guys do it? Minato pleaded once more. Naruto looked at Mito for a few seconds before he turned and looked back at his father and said, sure, I guess. Yeah. I can get Tusama to come here. Mito spoke with confidence at her ability to do that. Thank you so much, children. Minato's jubilation could be seen by the hug he gave both children and could be heard in his voice. No problem, Tusan Minato-oji. Both children sounded happy to help. As soon as the hug ended, both children began thinking up ways in which they could lure the leaders of the two clans. Yuzu no Kuni Southport the next day. The port of Hai no Kuni was packed. Fishermen that frequented the legendary island that only housed one clan had docked their boats and ships in the spaces made readily available to them. There was a special section of the port that was dedicated to the large ship that the Senju would be arriving in. Everyone on the island, shinobi and civilian alike, wanted to catch a glimpse of the leader of the most powerful clan in the world. For those that lived on the island, it was perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Standing at the head of it all, at the foot of the pier, was the main Uzumaki family and Naruto. The only blonde Uzumaki in existence was dressed in a pair of black pants, matching sandals and a white kimono top that boasted his clan's insignia on it proudly over his heart. Tied around his wrists and ankles were a pair of white bandages. This was a look he usually sported outside of training. The trio of grandfather, father and daughter stood next to a few Uzumaki shinobi that were standing on the water. The four shinobi in question had their hands planted into the water and looks of utmost concentration were on their faces. There was a bit of a sweat on their brows, caused by what they were doing. From what Naruto could remember from his days in the academy, there was a specialized group of individuals that dealt with the whirlpools that surrounded their great island. The whirlpools were meant to act as a natural deterrent for other clans to try and attack them, and they did their part very well. too well in fact. The problem that they created was that they ended up acting as a bit of an inhibitor to the Uzumaki shinobi on the island, preventing them, at first, from leaving the island at will. After a while though, they found a simple solution to their problem through specialized kinjutsu. They could, in essence, control the current and speed any which way they pleased. This allowed them to have something akin to an early barrier detection system that could, in theory, prevent any and all from crossing their waters, unless if the Uzumaki gave express permission. The 4 shinobi on the water were part of a special barrier team of Uzumaki that, while not as good as other Uzumaki at kinjutsu, they could at least operate the seals placed all over the island and in the water that would act as a strong first line of defense. Right now they were controlling the waters to allow for what Naruto assumed was a large ship, judging by the sweat they exuded, to pass onto their territory. The Uzumaki were a clan of sugar-high kids that had to be exerted beyond normal measures in order to be tired out. That was another reason why they were the only clan on Yuzu no Kuni. It was not that they did not want to share any space they didn't, but the other reason was that it was impossible for any other clan other than the Uzumaki to inhabit the island. Hundreds of years before the Uzumaki came to claim Yuzu as their own, dozens of other clans sought to make it theirs. The dangerous waters made it next to impossible to get on or off the island. They were very hard to defeat. The Uzumaki did it though, and as such they became the rightful rulers of the island. Naruto, look. Naruto was drawn out of his thoughts by Mito's voice as she pointed at something he had not been paying attention to before. It started out as a small dot that was obscured by the sun before it eventually became something that was extremely visible to the naked eye. The large ship, with white sails, came barreling down the waters of Yuzu no Kuni at speeds that Naruto thought were next to impossible for a ship of its size. Looking at the Uzumaki shinobi on the water's surface, with their hands stuck in the water, he quickly understood why. The reason why these guys were feeling so much fatigue from something that the text scrolls had referred to as something that wouldn't be too taxing on an Uzumaki controlling the whirlpools around the island was because they weren't just controlling the current of the whirlpools, but the actual ocean itself. They were making sure that the ship carrying the Senju clan's leader and his entourage arrived safely on the island at a very fast pace. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the teamwork shown by his clansmen. This was one of the many examples he points to whenever someone asked him why he loved being an Uzumaki. The supposed hippies of the shinobi world. So, what do you think they're like? Mito whispered into his ear, breaking his thoughts once more. Who? The Senju? Naruto whispered back. Yes. Well, I think there's a reason why they're currently the #1 ranked clan in the world. Naruto gave his own honest opinion. You said currently, as in they were not always the strongest clan in the world. Mito inquired, catching the way Naruto worded his answer. Well, yeah. Naruto turned to look at his best friend for the last 3 months. He saw that there was a slight perplexity on her face. According to some research I've done, the Uzumaki were the strongest clan 300 years ago. Wow. Really? Mito's awe was very hard to miss. Yeah, but then other clans started becoming jealous of us. We're the reason the wanted books exist. What do you mean? Mito inquired. Well, Naruto exhaled a bit before he continued with his explanation. Before we lived on this island, we lived in several different parts of the mainland, mainly Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni. Our clan was the largest in number and the strongest of them all. Other clans became jealous of us and started coming after the Uzumaki. Oh, yeah. We're the only clan to ever have a bounty placed on everyone. Everybody wanted what we had, and as such they did their utmost best to take it from us. Naruto's face took on a somber look. There were skirmishes all over the mainland that resulted in a large number of Uzumaki losing their lives. All of our allies had turned their backs on us. Even the Senju? Yep. Them too. Then how come we're allies again? Mito, for the life of her, could not understand the reason behind how everything operated. She knew that Naruto did, he was extremely intelligent after all, and that he would try to make her understand as well. That's how their friendship went. Naruto learned complex things, and then he would explain them to her in very simple terms. Well, you see, the word ally is like a stone that's in midair. It only lasts for as long as it has the power to do so, before it crashes onto the ground. Looking at his friend, Naruto saw that she understood what he was saying by the simple nod she gave him. So that would mean that even this alliance we have right now could crash as well. Yep. Hence why it's important that both sides try to keep up their ends of the bargain. Even if we're cousins. Mito's innocence could be felt through the way she asked Naruto the question. Distant cousins, Mito. The Senju and Uzumaki are distant cousins. Really, really distant cousins. Naruto spoke with such clarity that Mito understood what he was saying underneath it all. The Uzumaki and Senju weren't truly family. Not at all. Naruto could see that Mito finally understood the gravity of the visit by the Senju. Whatever request that they had, if not honored, could result in a war between the two clans with the longest relative peace between them. The ship carrying the Senju finally pulled up to the docks, slowing down as it drew closer until it finally came to a standstill. The ship's anchor holding it in place. A plank was dropped onto the pier just a few feet in front of the Uzumaki royalty, and out stepped a man flanked by two boys. Silence reigned supreme at that moment. The man was of tall stature, he also possessed black eyes and shoulder-length black hair kept back out of his face by a piece of light green cloth tied around his forehead. He also had a prominent jawline and wore the red standard armor of that era, emblazoned with the Senju symbol at the front and on both sides of the shoulder plates, accompanied with mesh armor underneath his attire. In addition, he wore a sword over his right shoulder. This was, without a show of a doubt, Senju Bitsuma. The first of the two boys that stepped out was dressed in a pair of black clothes, which consisted of a t-shirt and pants underneath green armor that was standard for Shinobi. Around his head rested a white band that bore the Senju emblem, and on his back rested a sword. The oddest thing about this boy was his haircut, which was cut in such a way that it resembled a bull. The other boy wore armor that was constructed from green metal plates that covered his torso, lower behind, and groin alongside fishnet armor around his wrists and shins. Underneath the armor rested a pair of navy pants and shirt. His hair, unlike Bitsuma's and the other boy that accompanied him, was shockingly gray and also very spiky. As the trio walked towards the Uzumaki entourage, two more children stepped out from behind them. This time it was a boy and a girl. The boy had a head of short two-toned hair, with one side being black and the other half being white with matching eyebrows. He wore green armor and wrapped a piece of cloth around his forehead. From what Naruto could glean, he seemed to be around his age. Next to the two-toned haired boy was a girl decked in a similar style to the boy, with the only difference being the color of the armor. Hers was gray. Her hair was tied in a short ponytail, and her eyes were squinted in such a way that she looked like she didn't have any eyes to begin with. She carried herself in a similar manner to the gray-haired boy that had stepped out alongside the presumed Senju Bitsuma. Behind them, the crew working on the ship were busy tying up the sails and making sure that nothing was out of place. Turning his attention back to the few people walking down towards them, Naruto took better stock of the two boys, walking next to the man he thought was Senju Bitsuma. The brown-haired one with a haircut resembling a bull looked contemplative and slightly nervous. He seemed to be thinking up something really important. The other boy carried himself with the cockiness and swagger of someone that believed that they could defeat anyone and anything placed in front of them. He must be very strong, Naruto thought. "Welcome, Senju Dono." Jin greeted Bitsuma as soon as he stopped in front of him. "Thank you, Uzumaki Dono." Bitsuma replied with a very serious tone, "It's good to be back here after so many years. It's great to have you return to us." Jin spoke with the same natural expression he always kept on his face. He then gestured to the former leader of the Uzumaki clan and said, "You already know my father." "Of course. Ginrei Dono is someone that I would be hard-pressed to find that didn't know about him," Bitsuma said, bowing in the former clan head's direction, which resulted in Ginrei doing the same to him. "Oh, that's a lot of confidence placed on an old man," Ginrei replied after bowing at Bitsuma. "It's well-deserved confidence." Bitsuma spoke with a politeness in his tone that would make a few people that did not know him on a personal level dismiss some of the more asinine stories surrounding him and his almost tyrannical ways. Ginrei, fortunately, was one of the few individuals in the world that knew the man on a personal level, and as such, he knew not to dismiss those stories or to even undermine the man that stood before him. He was as much of a beast off the battlefield as much as he was on it. "This," Ginrei heard his son intone from the side, "is my precious daughter, Mito. It's very nice to meet you, Mito-chan." Bitsuma said this with the same polite tone as before, although his face was as stoic as ever. "Likewise, Bitsuma-sama," Mito said, bowing at the leader of the strongest clan in the world. "And the boy," Bitsuma said when he saw that Jin was not going to introduce him to the blonde child next to Mito. Ginrei, in an attempt to make sure that Bitsuma didn't see anything wrong with the setup that they had with Naruto there, quickly said, "Oh, that's Naruto. He's a very bright young boy that is quite strong for his age. Oh, now my interest has been piqued." Bitsuma said this while staring at Naruto, who held the powerful gaze of the Senju leader with his own, significantly less powerful one. "To have Ginrei the wise talk of you with such pride must be truly special." "Not really," Naruto said, bowing at the man, before continuing, "I just work hard." "Well, I'd like to see exactly just how hard you work in a spar. You shall face off against my eldest, Hashirama." Bitsuma pointed at the boy with a bowl-shaped haircut while saying this. Said boy jumped out of his skin, so to speak, as soon as his name had been called out, as if he had been caught stealing something. "What about the other four?" Naruto asked. "What about them? Are they not strong too?" "Oh, they are. Then why not have me spar against them as well?" "Because it should be the Uzumaki's most promising prospect going up against the Senju's most promising. That way we can see exactly where both of our illustrious clans measure against each other." "Yes, but enough, Naruto." Jin spoke up from the sidelines, silencing his blonde student. Jin had the look of a perfectly calm individual as he spoke again, "We'll have the spar tomorrow, for now we have other matters to take care of." With all of the greetings all said and done, Jin pointed his hand at the hill that overlooked the whirling city and said, "This way, gentlemen. That is where our discussion shall take place." Bitsuma acquiesced to the Uzumaki clan leader taking the lead on this one. After all, it was his village. Just as the party was about to begin their journey to the hillside manor of the Uzumaki, Mito spoke up, "Wait. If Jin were a man that did not have the ability to rein in his emotions the way that he did, he would have probably rolled his eyes at that point. He had just pseudo-chastised Naruto for holding up the talks with Bitsuma, and now Mito was doing the same as well. What is it?" The irritation in Jin's voice could not be masked. "Oh." Mito was a bit taken aback by her father's tone, but she quickly steeled herself and spoke out, "Well, I think it would be best if we took Senju-sama and his children on a tour of the whirling city." "Why would I do that when it would only slow take the children?" Bitsuma suddenly spoke up, interrupting Jin. "How what?" Mito and her father said respectively. "Take the children. It's not like they're needed in our talks." Bitsuma said, "Show them around, show them whatever you want." "Are you sure, Sama?" the gray-haired child said. "Absolutely, Tabarama." Bitsuma spoke with an empty smile on his face, "You and your brothers deserve this after all you have been through these last few months." "Alright." Tabarama nodded in his father's direction. As soon as that had been said, the strongest Senju alive walked away from his children, quickly catching up to the Uzumaki leaders that were in front of him, and they slowly began walking away from the pier. Most of the people there decided to follow the great men, looking to catch snippets of whatever conversation that might have struck up between them. Those that stayed behind did so because they wanted to talk to the Senju kids. Naruto had no idea why they would want to do so. "So, I'm Mito." Naruto heard his best friend say from the sidelines. He hadn't even realized that she was already trying to talk to the Senju kids. "Oh, I'm Tabarama." The gray-haired boy replied since he was the closest to her, "These are my brothers Hashirama." He points to the bowl-shaped haircut boy, and Atama. He points to the dual hair-colored boy, "The girl is our cousin, Tamka. It's very nice to meet you all." Mito said, bowing at all four of them. "Likewise." Hashirama replied with his own bow. And so, with the children finally acquainted with one another, they began their journey towards Minato's shop. To be continued. What if Naruto was born during the clan wars? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.